That's after another cyber attack took up to 1,500 businesses offline last weekend. FSN's Washington correspondent Giles Gibson reports.
When the two leaders met in Geneva last month, Joe Biden warned Vladimir Putin about cyber attacks from Russia-based hackers on US infrastructure and companies. Just over 3 weeks later, he once again urged Putin to, quote, take action to disrupt ransomware groups operating in Russia, according to a summary of the call released by the White House on Friday. Cybersecurity researchers have blamed an affiliate of the REvil group for the latest global ransomware attack, which infected thousands of computers all over the world. Russian officials have repeatedly denied any links between hacking groups and the Kremlin. Giles Gibson, Washington.
Biden also confirmed the US withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan will be complete by the end of August. However, on Friday, the Pentagon said the Taliban is making gains in the country. FSN's US correspondent Nick Harper reports.
President Joe Biden had already set September the 11th as the date by which all US troops would be out of the country. Now he says it'll be done by August the 31st. When asked by reporters, though, he rejected the idea that the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan was now inevitable.
The Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force, against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
But with the militant group continuing to make advances and with more than 1,000 Afghan troops recently fleeing the country, there are concerns for the future of Afghanistan once the US troops leave. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Cases of the COVID-19 Delta variant are spreading throughout the world, including in Australia, where in the state of New South Wales, numbers jumped again this week. A stay-at-home order covering more than 5 million residents in the Greater Sydney, Wollongong and Central Coast has been extended to July 16th. FSN's Sean Bindley reports.
With the message seemingly not getting through to people about being tested and isolating when they have symptoms, the state's lockdown is on the verge of being extended beyond next week. New South Wales Health Minister Brad Hazzard has pleaded with residents to stay at home unless it's absolutely necessary.
I can't tell you how concerned I am now as Health Minister the way this Delta virus is moving through our community. We were told some years ago to be alert and not alarmed. Right now, here in Greater Sydney as Health Minister, I am both alert and alarmed.
In Brisbane, I'm Sean Bindley.
The Tokyo Olympics will be held without spectators in stadiums after a state of emergency was declared in Japan's capital. Coronavirus case numbers in the country are climbing once again, with just over 2 weeks to go until the opening ceremony. Our correspondent Phoebe Amoroso is in Tokyo.
We heard from Japan's Olympic minister saying that in the name of safety, they would put this cap on spectators. IOC Thomas Bach as well saying that it's a responsibility to the Japanese people. It's important also to note that many people here have still yet to be vaccinated. Only around 15% of the population have been fully inoculated. Japan's vaccination program was very slow to roll out. It's really picked up speed, so much that demand has outstripped supply and there have been a few cancellations. It slowed down a bit. Prime Minister Suga is saying that, okay, yes, this is the fourth state of emergency that Tokyo is facing and vaccines are the way out of this loop. He expects that 40% of the population will be vaccinated by August the 22nd when the state of emergency is set to expire. But that is, of course, after the Olympic Games.
I'm Caroline Malone in Washington, and that was the Week in Review.
As of today, the average cost of a pack of cigarettes has gone up to 2 hand jobs and a stick of beef jerky. For more, we go now to Onion News Network prison economics expert Hal Rogan.
The prison economy runs on cigarettes. They're involved in every economic transaction at some stage, from contract killings to naked woman picture acquisition.
Right.
That's why we've got shampoo at 6 batteries. We've got tattoos at 50 commissary stamps.
Now, for what it's really like out there in the market, let's check in with major cigarette trader Big Dap Ramirez. Big Dap, nice to see you again.
Thanks, Rick. Good to see you. What's happening, Hal?
How's it going, Big Dap?
Now, it's obviously a boom time for cigarettes right now.
I'm getting a lot of hand
But with
jobs.
prices this high, analysis shows you're going to be seeing a drop-off in real sales soon as consumers turn to smoking grass fajos.
Look, we've been through this before. The market teaches us not to panic. But if I learn anything in this game, it's that a wife or girlfriend will pass off a few decks in the boneyard. Supply will normalize, and we'll see cigarettes returning to a single hand job or less.
Big Dap, best of luck to you. We'll keep checking in on the story with Hal throughout the day.
Thanks, Rick.
Moving on to some happier news. In Atlanta today, 2 snitches were beaten to death.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160 if you want to join the discussion, take control of the airwaves, talk about whatever's on your mind. 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
And Beagless Mountaineer.
And, man, it's been a funny day for news and stuff like that. There's two articles in particular that I just absolutely love. The first of which is about this guy in Long Island who has not paid his mortgage in 20 years.
Impressive.
And yet, yes, and he continually manages to evade eviction. And the way he does this is by manipulating the court system. And it's one of the best things I've read in a long time.
Yeah, I think that we are moving more and more into a period of time where the inefficiency of the court system is kind of hitting its maximum. So, like, just all of the things that have been subtly kind of reliant on this as a backup are just breaking down completely.
That's what we get from Fox News. A Long Island man who hasn't paid his mortgage in 20 years dodges eviction again. So his name is Hanspel. He's 52. He hasn't coughed up a dime to live in his East Meadow home since making his first payment in 1998. But he ducked eviction for decades by filing lawsuits and bankruptcies. Records show the home, which was foreclosed on years ago, is now owned by Diamond Ridge Partners, which hauled Hanspel into court in a bid to finally boot him from the property. At a Wednesday morning hearing in Nassau County, Judge William A. Hohauser, agreed to delay the case after Hanspel's attorney, William Friedman, requested more time, claiming that his co-counsel, David Gavanter, had been hired the day before.
Well, and so two things come to mind about this. Number one, I mean, we gave the lawyers the decision-making of, like, how much they can stall and how much court we can do. Turns out they decided a lot. I mean, when you can say, oh, how much work does my profession get? All of it. And two, like, well, this is why I've always been against bankruptcy. Like, I think it's a terrible idea, but, you know, if you're going to keep doing it, someone's going to figure out how to game that system.
My favorite part is this. This is the last of approximately 40 attorneys who have appeared on the eve of a hearing, exasperated Diamond Ridge lawyer Jordan Katz told the judge. This is very typical of the defendant. He recycles lawyers to buy himself more time. This guy is basically mocking the courts.
Yeah, I guess the rent on that place must be a lot more expensive than lawyers.
That's what I don't get about it as well.
I mean, like, is this activism for him? Is he, or like, is this just how he gets his jollies? Is, you know, I'm going to pay lawyers instead of rent.
I don't know, man, but it's a curious tactic at the least. I can't imagine the lawyers are cheaper than the rent, though. I mean, lawyers are expensive.
I don't know.
But
rent
so is
in some
rent,
places,
yeah.
like, what is this, in New York? Because that would make sense.
It's Long Island, so yeah.
Yeah, Long Island rents are pretty extreme. And I mean,
extreme enough to make hiring an attorney cheaper?
Well, you don't have to have a good one. I mean, you can pretty much scrape the bottom of the barrel and be like, yeah, I want you to file for an extension. And then I want you to file for an extension.
In the court hearing, Friedman, who is the defendant's latest or longest standing attorney, who knows, accused Katz, the other attorney, of using, quote, scandalous language. Reached by phone after the appearance, Friedman declined to make Hanspel available for an interview. Here's the best part. When asked why Hanspel hadn't paid his mortgage, the attorney pinned the blame on Governor Cuomo's March 2020 eviction moratorium, claiming that the governor... Right? It just keeps getting better, doesn't it?
That's just gravy. Why didn't you pay your rent? Because you weren't going to evict me for not paying my rent. I mean...
Well, you got to remember, he stopped paying his mortgage in 1998. But in 2020,
he's got a brand new excuse.
So he claimed the governor had made paying rent, quote, a moral obligation. He hung up after a Post reporter noted his client's failure to pay predates the pandemic by 20 years. COVID-19 protections, which put the brakes on evictions, shouldn't apply to Hanspool, Katz argued, because Hanspool isn't legally occupying the house. We don't believe the act was put in place to protect individuals like this. The fact that this is even possible, and the fact that we could sit here discussing whether or not it's cheaper to pay attorneys than it is to pay your mortgage in Long Island, is insane. That's proof that this entire system is broken. So maybe he's onto something.
Oh yeah, I mean, I couldn't afford a place in Long Island, but I might be able to file the paperwork necessary to make it take too long for them to evict me before I die.
He has managed to successfully do this for 20-something years. I guess it's 23 years now. He's managed to live without paying his mortgage at all, and he just keeps it tied up in the court system.
In a weird way, it's kind of like him and the court system are ganging up on the person who he would be paying the property to. Because, I mean, it's in every member of the court's best interest to keep everything going as long as possible, because that's just more money in their pocket. Like, they have no incentive to wrap this up. Why would they want to? And it's certainly in his best interest to keep this going as long as possible. So every time it's like, oh, I'm bankrupt again, we have to start over.
That is curious to me. I'm not sure how the bankruptcy really plays into it, other than, hey, he can't pay his mortgage, so he declares bankruptcy, and now it gets tied up in courts for another 7 years. But kudos to him for managing to basically use the courts against themselves.
Yeah, I am far from an expert on how bankruptcies work, but basically they're like, okay, we're going to put a pause on this so that we can rearrange what you owe and when you owe it so that you can pay off your creditors. Which I've always thought that was dumb, but apparently lots of people think it's a great idea, and, well, this is exactly what you can do with that. Oh, I got bankrupt again, and now I need another extension so that we can, redo this, so we can determine how much I should have been paying you now.
I certainly applaud the guy's creativity here and how he managed to live in a place for 23 years without paying a mortgage, and now that his hearing came the day before, he swaps out attorneys and hires a new one, and has to get pushed back for 6 more months or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is what happens when your basis of property is the government says so. Like, well, how do we know it's your house? Well, the government says so. Now, we have a different sense of property of, well, either I did the labor to alter nature to make it mine, or it was given to me, or I traded it. I traded something that one of those is true of in order to get this. And that's our basis of property rights. Whereas theirs is, well, the government says that they own it. And this is exactly the sort of nonsense that can happen when that's your basis for ownership.
There is more nonsense in the world. I mentioned there were 2 stories that I wanted to get into. The other one is sort of an opinion piece by Tucker Carlson, who I'm not really a fan of. But what happened here
He is my favorite person on Fox by far.
Yeah,
I mean,
probably mine as well, but that's a really low bar.
There is that.
So he writes, there are an awful lot of issues in the news right now. A lot of them are pretty depressing. So on this Friday, we thought we'd start with something pretty amusing. Back in 2015, our government's so-called intelligence community, which is not intelligent or a community, announced that it was embarking on a new 5-year mission. The goal, according to the Obama administration, was to funnel more resources to every spy agency in the country. The CIA, the NSA, FBI, DIA, and so forth. I didn't even know the FBI was considered a spy agency, but that's a bit concerning.
I mean, realistically, they definitely are a spy agency. It's weird for them to start acknowledging them as such, though.
Do you know what the DIA stands for? I've never heard that acronym.
Oh, let me think. I think it's like directed intelligence something or other. Yeah, it's because, we didn't have enough spy agencies. We just needed a few more on top of that. And let's throw another naval spy agency in there because we needed another one of those. And
well, that's exactly what they did. Even the Coast Guard's in-house intelligence operation was slated to get a bigger budget.
Yeah, that's what we need. Richer spies.
Now, not necessarily. So what did the government actually give them this money for, and what did they do with it? What are your calls and thoughts? We're going to get into it. This is Free Talk Live.
brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
Your amp will directly change more lives by getting Free Talk Live in front of people looking for talk radio online and on the air. When you amp Free Talk Live, you get perks like access to the AMP-only Facebook group and AMP podcast. Visit amp.freetalklive.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join the discussion, talk about whatever you want, or you can join the discussion here about the ridiculous court systems and what we're about to get into, the ridiculous intelligence community, just in general, the ridiculous federal government. But before we get into that, I want to tell you about Bitcoin.com. It is the place to go to learn about cryptocurrency. It's got a number of short videos. Just click Getting Started up at the top, and it will take you to these short videos that will teach you the basics so that you can get started in the world of cryptocurrency, but maybe you already know the basics and you just want to stay up to date on what's happening in the cryptocurrency world, well, then check out news.bitcoin.com. There they have the latest headlines of all the news that's relevant to you. News.bitcoin.com. Now, the federal government back in 2015 decided that they were going to give spy agencies such as the CIA, the NSA, the FBI for some reason, and several others, even the Coast Guard's in-house intelligence operation, more money. Tucker Carlson goes on to say, under normal circumstances, an announcement like that would set off fear, trembling among our opponents around the world. Maybe he has opponents, but I certainly don't. They would be shaking in their caves. The Chinese might think twice before bribing more Harvard professors or sending Eric Swalwell, a new secret agent, to have sex with. But in this case, they just laughed. I have no idea what he's talking about there, about bribing Harvard professors or who Eric Swalwell even is.
Yeah, it's probably just something that he's been talking about on his show. I'm obviously not a regular watcher, but every now and again, he does say something pretty awesome.
Yeah, this article is pretty awesome. Because they knew that money wasn't going to buy drones or more sophisticated surveillance equipment or more agents in the field. Instead, it was earmarked for new platoons of, quote, equity and inclusion consultants and HR administrators.
More female spies.
It's significantly dumber than that.
More minority spies.
Well, that's what you would expect, right, from this sort of equity and inclusion program, but that's not what ended up happening. It basically paid for some Photoshop. The point of the money was to make the intelligence community more diverse, meaning less white and male. Finally, America's spies would look different, which is essential if you want to, well, we're not sure why it's essential. What does the race and gender of the intelligence agency employees have to do with keeping America safe? Now, this is one of the few, any federal agency, in fact, this is one of the few places where I don't want them to hire the best qualified person. I would rather they focus on characteristics that don't matter. Focus on the person's skin color or gender or whatever, whether they're the best person for the job or not. I don't care, because I don't really want the best person for the job there, because I don't want the government to be effective.
Yeah, when it comes to the invasion of privacy of private individuals, I want the government to be as inefficient as possible.
Yeah, so please, by all means, hire the black, genderqueer, trans person if you want to, as long as you don't hire someone who is best at that particular job. And maybe it is her, maybe it isn't.
And you know, in fact, you should pick every single category and make sure that you have an equal number of every single category. You know, why not? That's inclusive.
It is, and it makes the federal government less effective, and I'm on board with that. So these intelligence agencies never told us what race and gender have to do with keeping America safe. Instead, they told us something we'd heard once or twice before, quote, diversity is our strength. And then he goes on to quote a number of politicians who basically said those exact words. How does it work exactly? Shut up. Just read the cliche. It's on the card. Enormous strength. We are now officially much stronger. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence has just released the proof. It's called the Annual Demographic Report for Fiscal Year 2020. Hiring and retention of minorities, women, and persons with disabilities in the United States intelligence community. That's the title of the report. You'll want to get a copy in time for Christmas, not to read it. It isn't meant to be read. In fact, it's unreadable. But for the pictures. The pictures are amazing. We now have conclusive photographic evidence that our spy agencies employ several people with different skin color. There's even a woman in a wheelchair, as well as a man who appears to be blind. How do we know he's blind? We're not making assumptions like that.
As long as the Gestapo is woke, we're good, right?
Well, the person they're talking to has got Ray Charles glasses, a cane, and a seeing eye dog.
There you go. That is the face of the spies that I want.
If that seems like a lot, remember, the best spies have a backup plan. Let's say Russian assassins come after our blind intel agent as he's picking up a dead drop of microfilm in a park in East Berlin. They somehow manage to take out his seeing eye dog, maybe with a net. That's okay. He can manage. He's still got both the cane and the glasses. And by the way, We assume the cane. We assume the cane. That's why I didn't understand it earlier, because I read it as canine when I was looking through this. And by the way, we assume the cane shoots darts. At the CIA, they think of everything. It's their job. Now, I love how Tucker Carlson immediately goes into the most unfitting place for a blind spy to be. Instead of having them at the office doing something administrative, which is probably what they would be doing, he's like...
You would presume that, like, unless you have a really good reason for doing so, that you don't send the blind one into the field.
You would think so, but, he glosses right over that and just pretends like every spy in these agencies does is they get in the field.
Yeah, and you can definitely tell where Tucker Carlson and I drastically differ in worldview, because he's really upset that these spies are not the best darn spies in the world. Like, we shouldn't be doing this, we should be getting the best spies all of the time. It's like, Tucker, shut up. Let them hire the worst spies. I'm glad they're not hiring more spies. How about that?
Well, they may be hiring the best spies, but that's not what they're presenting to the world. What's the blind guy's job exactly? What does he do in our favorite intel community? How is he keeping America safe? We don't doubt that he is, but how? Well, we don't know because the report doesn't tell us.
Well, I can definitely think of a lot of jobs that I would put a blind man on. I mean, the way the neuroplasticity of the brain works, it enhances your ability to process all of your other senses.
I've always heard that was a myth started by, healthy people to make themselves feel less uncomfortable around the disabled.
It's absolutely true. I've seen lots of scientific studies to that effect, and it just makes basic sense. Like, if your brain doesn't have this pathway, well, I mean, you've still got these neurons. They're not going to just, like, die. So you're going to assign those neurons to other tasks. So I'm sure that he can probably parse out different audio fragments at a much better completion rate than someone who hasn't really trained in doing so.
Nor does the report explain why there seems to be some sort of dark halo around the lower part of the blind man's body. What is that? Spy vapor? Another question. Where are the old people in the picture? A lot of Americans are pretty old. The intel community says it's diverse, so where are the senior citizens? Where are the 80-year-old super spies?
That's right, NSA. More geriatric spies.
Well, if they're going to have blind and wheelchair-ridden spies, there's more coming up on this.
If it's good enough for the president, it's good enough for you.
But what are your thoughts? 603-283-6160. More coming up. This is Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with The Week in Review. Police in Haiti have killed at least 4 gunmen and arrested a number of others suspected of murdering President Jovenel Moïse. They say they're still looking for other people who planned the assassination. FSN's Rachel Silverman has more.
At least 4 gunmen have been killed and 6 more detained in the assassination of the Haitian president. Haitian officials say 1, perhaps 2 of the suspects are Americans. The president was shot dead at his home early on Wednesday. His wife was seriously injured and she's been flown to Florida for treatment in a hospital. Angry civilians have joined in the hunt for the assassins, capturing some suspects themselves and setting fire to vehicles thought to have been used in the attack. The interim Haitian Prime prime minister has appealed for calm and has declared a state of siege. Rachel Silverman, Oakland, California.
The White House says US President Joe Biden urged his Russian counterpart to take action on ransomware groups. That's after another cyber attack took up to 1,500 businesses offline last weekend. FSN's Washington correspondent Giles Gibson reports.
When the two leaders met in Geneva last month, Joe Biden warned Vladimir Putin about cyber attacks from Russia-based hackers on US infrastructure and companies. Just over 3 weeks later, he once again urged Putin to, quote, take action to disrupt ransomware groups operating in Russia, according to a summary of the call released by the White House on Friday. Cybersecurity researchers have blamed an affiliate of the REvil group for the latest global ransomware attack, which infected thousands of computers all over the world. Russian officials have repeatedly denied any links between hacking groups and the Kremlin. Giles Gibson, Washington.
Biden also confirmed the US withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan will be complete by the end of August. However, on Friday, the Pentagon said the Taliban is making gains in the country. FSN's US correspondent Nick Harper reports.
President Joe Biden had already set September the 11th as the date by which all US troops would be out of the country. Now he says it'll be done by August the 31st. When asked by reporters, though, he rejected the idea that the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan was now inevitable.
The Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force, against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
But with the militant group continuing to make advances and with more than 1,000 Afghan troops recently fleeing the country, there are concerns for the future of Afghanistan once the US troops leave. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160 if you want to join the discussion. That's 603-283-6160. And what a discussion it is about just government stupidity. Whether we were talking initially about the guy in Long Island who has managed to use the government to protect himself from eviction from a bank for the last 23 years. I mean, there's really no good guys in that story. The guy who's got this tied up in the court system is probably the best example of a good guy we have in that particular story. But the bank, they're evil. Mm-hmm. The U.S. government, I mean, obviously they're evil. So using them against each other while he just lives rent-free in this property, I don't necessarily have any moral issue with. Good on him for that, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Assuming it's bank-owned property, it would suck to be the guy that owns that place, but, you know.
Well, they mentioned the owner, but I don't remember now exactly who it is. It's some company that bought it from the bank. I don't recall. But let's go to the phones. We got Jerome, who is listening on WTMA. Jerome, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, I just got to ask you a couple of things about old Tuck Carlson, Tucky Carl. Hey, how many women has he chased around his desk or around the room like Roger Ailes? Is he going to dump his old lady like old Sean Hannity, Mr. Faithfully Married for 20-something years, and take up with one of the other Fox, wink, wink, broadcasters of the female persuasion? And the other thing is he got any more friends like his buddy Matt Gaetz that's a pedophile that he hangs around with?
Yeah, I don't know
anything. His buddy who?
What was
Tucker
the name?
Carlson.
No, what was the name of his buddy?
Matt Gaetz. What do you mean, what's the name of his buddy?
Dude,
Matt
Gaetz.
Gaetz.
Matt Gaetz. Jerome, I got to tell you, I don't pay any attention to Tucker Carlson. I mean, this article just happened by me, and I just happened to read it because it had an interesting headline, but the article itself was, for the most part, pretty funny. But I don't know anything about the guy.
I just need to get that out about him. You know, I want him to get his due, his just due. But I want to say, I just watched the story on 60 Minutes again about Syria. How in the hell does that scumbag stay in office?
Which one?
From Syria, the one from Syria. Saddam, what's his name?
Assad?
Yeah, Assad.
Because there's like no one left to replace him. Like, he wasn't even
'cause he
supposed to
killed
be
all
running
of
this
them.
country. He didn't kill the
Yeah,
others.
he killed
Well,
all
he killed the
yeah.
ones that were after his job once he got it. But like, he was the optometrist brother. Like, he wasn't even supposed to be in this job. The guy who was supposed to be in this job got killed. And yeah, ever
And you
since
saw what
it's been all this intersecting warfare, and like everyone who could run the country well is dead.
He done
Like
killed
it's a
he
situation
done
where
killed
like
a
there
whole
are
bunch-
no good guys there.
And you see Haiti? I'm surprised that hasn't happened sooner. Huh? How did the Royer family speak out of
Well,
of town?
and every time that they would have like come to an impasse on this, America gets involved and keeps stirring the pot and stirring the pot.
Oh, we're not going there because that's a black country. I mean, we'll stay our ass in Afghanistan for 20-something damn years, but ain't no way in hell we going to Haiti because that's black people.
You're wrong,
Y'all go
Jerome.
and kill
The
each
United
other.
States
We don't
military,
care.
the United States military is already in Syria. They are there right now.
Yeah, I know, but he's still there too. And you know, Assad, and he's still killing people too. But nobody
Yeah,
killed him.
so's the
You
US
see what happened
military.
in Haiti, right? Yeah, he wasn't the guy in Haiti. He wasn't even there that long, and they got rid of his ass. Okay, I'm surprised this hasn't happened to other countries like Russia, maybe.
You're surprised what hasn't happened to
Or some-
Russia?
Jerome, thank you so much for the call tonight. You got a little bit close to possibly upsetting our FCC censors there, so I want to go ahead and put you on hold. But thank you for the call. You know, I just watched a documentary yesterday. It's about an hour and 20 minutes long called Ghosts of Abu Ghraib. And if you are familiar with the story of the Gulags, which I wasn't familiar with until Ian recommended that I read the book, Gulag Archipelago, I got about 20...
Terrifying.
Yeah, I got about 20% of the way through it. It's still a work in progress, right? I'm not abandoning it. I just haven't finished it. So I did have a bit of background information about how the Soviet Union rounded these people up and put them in prisons, basically arbitrarily in an extrajudicial way that didn't have anything to do with criminality or the court system. And when you look at what happened in Iraq following the United States invasion of Iraq, it's exactly the same thing. Just pulling random people out of the houses, ripping their houses apart, looking for things that they're not supposed to, looking for names on scraps of paper because they saw a guy, they had a conversation out in the street, they shook someone's hands, and he went and had a conversation with someone else, and that someone else happened to be a domestic terrorist or whatever. Next thing you know, you're throwing 15 people into prison. Donald Rumsfeld, of course, signs off on the torture order, sends the general that was, or the major who was heading up Guantanamo Bay to Iraq in order to, quote, fix its prison systems. It's absolutely horrifying. The very last
You
thing...
know, our Iraqi prisons just don't look enough like Guantanamo Bay. Go fix that for us.
Well, Donald Rumsfeld was unhappy that they weren't getting any information at all. Not just unreliable information, which is generally what torture yields. They weren't getting any information. So he sent the guy there who was an
Almost
expert at getting information, even if it's incorrect.
Yeah, almost like you picked the wrong people.
Yeah, well,
Almost like
obviously
it
they
took
did.
a bunch of innocent people that had nothing to do with anything and thus don't know anything and just tortured them for information they don't have. Gee, I wonder why that ain't working.
And Abu Ghraib was just a terrible prison, right? It wasn't even one of these black site prisons that the United States government has in countries like Saudi Arabia and places where they can, they can outsource the torture to other governments so they can, quote...
And just pretend it's not happening.
Yes. So Abu Ghraib was like a mild version of the U.S. torture system. It wasn't as bad as Guantanamo Bay, but they did actively torture thousands of people. And the prison population there went from like 1,000 to more than 6,000 in the course of 3 months because the United States military was just rounding up everyone and throwing them in prison. People who were completely and totally innocent. So yeah, anyone who wants more U.S. military invasions in other countries, they need to look at what actually happened.
Well, how are we supposed to radicalize the population against our military if we didn't, kidnap and torture innocent people?
The amazing thing is that there weren't more people radicalized, right? When they interview a lot of these former detainees, they weren't angry or bitter. They were just calm and collected. It's amazing that they could be tortured like that for 9 months to a year or more and then come out of the situation not being terrorists, but instead just being, okay, I'm going to carry on with you. You killed my father. You let him die as I begged you for medical help, and you imprisoned us naked and tortured us. But instead of fixating on that, I'm going to move forward with my life.
Yeah, that is some profound forgiveness right there.
It is. And the fact that so many people did it, you would expect that behavior like that they show off in Ghosts of Abu Ghraib, you would expect the entire country of Iraq to be militarized, to be radicalized, to become extremists. And instead, that didn't happen. There are still insurgents to this day, probably because they remember what the United States military has done there and is doing there. And like, hey, we don't really want you here. Now, as far as I'm aware, the United States military never actually set up any prisons in Afghanistan or never took over any. There was no Abu Ghraib of Afghanistan, but there were things like bombing Doctors Without Borders hospitals and bombing weddings and other horrific crimes against humanity that no one really talks about today while these wars are still ongoing. Evidently, the U.S. military is pulling out of Afghanistan again. I don't know if they're ever going to actually leave.
Maybe. And if they do, I'm sure it's just so that they can send them all some other place to do other terrible, terrible things.
Yeah, and the obvious result of that is that the Taliban is growing stronger. It's almost like we created a vacuum of power, and now that the U.S. military is no longer fulfilling that, other people are coming forward to do so. But what are your thoughts? 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with AgristHosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Bitcoin, Agris Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agrishosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agrishosting.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160 if you want to join the discussion. That's 603-283-6160. Now, we were getting into this article from Tucker Carlson about the spy agencies of the United States and about how all of this money was funneled to them in order to increase their diversity.
And to make a correction, DIA is the Defense Intelligence Agency, and they're at the very top of military intelligence. So now we know.
They such a confusing web of confusion.
More disabled military intelligence officers.
So Carlson asked, while looking at this picture from this report that was titled hold on, I got to find it again. The Annual Demographic Report for Fiscal Year 2020, Hiring and Retention of Minorities, Women, and Persons with Disabilities in the United States Intelligence Community. So he asked these questions, where are the 80-year-old super spies? You'd hate to think that for all of its famous sensitivity, the Biden people fell prey to ageism. I mean, not to mention they have one of the oldest, most senile presidents.
Exactly. If it's good enough for the president, then you need more geriatric spies. Come on.
Well, I do love the idea of, like, Joe Biden the spy. That's actually brilliant.
I want more spies with Joe Biden-level dementia. That's what I want.
I want a television show about Joe Biden being a super spy. Dude, I would watch the hell out of that. Can you imagine how hilarious it would be?
Yeah.
I mean, and it obviously can't really be Joe Biden, but you can have an actor play a character who is very clearly modeled after Joe Biden and who says, just randomly starts, like,
word salads every time he has to report to his commanding officer.
But maybe that's it. It's not a word salad. That's code language.
Oh, there you go.
When he talks about, who was it that was a bad dude?
Corn Pop. Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Corn Pop, you see, is code name for Putin.
All right.
Now it makes sense. Joe Biden is the ultimate super spy.
If he mentions his blonde leg hairs, we are calling off the strike. Okay, call off the strike. The blonde leg hairs have been petted. I repeat, the blonde leg hairs have been stroked.
I'm starting to wonder now. Not seriously, right? He's clearly just a senile old dude, but hey, man, it's not impossible. It makes more sense. It makes me feel better thinking that Biden is a super spy than that he's just this hopelessly senile old dude that people looked at and were like, you know what? We should make this person in charge of the entire United States.
I mean, I know he specifically got, like lost all of the elections that he was running against, these people. But we should take like someone who lost earlier than him and make them the VP, and then we'll do this, this, and this so that Bernie doesn't get it.
Yeah, it was stupid to watch all of this play out, but I like to think about what extraterrestrials would see if they looked at American politics. It's like we have this system that seems to be designed to find the two worst human beings on the planet, and then instead of putting them in prison or segregating them away from the rest of society, these two evil, senile, insane people, one of them becomes in charge of everything.
Well, I got to side with Douglas Adams on this. The purpose of the president is not to wield power, but to distract from it. And they are really good at that.
They are. And this is one of those distractions. While we're at it, honestly, we didn't see many trans women, non-binary, pansexual, two-spirits, or a single person from Malawi. That picture, which we greeted with joy, is starting to look problematic. And in fact, it is. According to Freelance Intelligence Analysis on Twitter, experts on digital manipulation, this image isn't real. These people were never in the same room at the same time. Some don't even work for the federal government. Maybe none of them.
I don't think that's what they usually mean by problematic, but that is a problem.
The whole thing is a disinformation campaign. It's a Soviet-style fake. Apparently, the Intel community spent some of its, quote, diversity budget not to achieve diversity, but to buy a stock image from a website called Shutterstock. That's correct. You can find this image on Shutterstock. That picture is entitled, quote, Portrait of Multicultural Office Staff Standing in Lobby. You could buy it too and put it on your next Christmas card if you wanted to. But apparently the stock photo of the multicultural office staff standing in lobby wasn't multicultural or diverse enough for the Biden people. So they inserted two other stock images into the picture.
And so I look at this thing and I think Soviet, I mean, it's not a bad comparison, but I think a much better comparison is if you saw in Nazi Germany, they're making a big thing and having lots of photo ops to make sure that we have completely Aryan people in all of our positions in the spy agencies. I mean, really, this is really just the flip side of that.
One of those images, also available on Shutterstock, is called, quite literally, Blind Young Man with Guide Dog on White Background, which is what the picture is. The other is entitled, creatively enough, Beautiful Businesswoman with Tablet Computer in Wheelchair on White Background.
Well,
so those aren't really Intel agents, they're stock photos.
That explains the spy fog.
On one level, this is good news. Oh, it does, because they would have had to use that to hide. Yeah. The intelligence community hasn't really outed the identity of its most attractive wheelchair-bound spy or its blind 007, so they're safe.
Well, I mean, I guess if you're going to put out pictures of your spies, you shouldn't actually put out pictures of your spies.
Well, you could put out people who work at, like, administration, because we know who the head of the CIA is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And there are other positions within the CIA that don't require them to be undercover, and presumably that's true of all of these spy organizations, including, evidently, the FBI, that they have some positions where they don't have to be undercover, and they could use those. But whether or not they actually have any wheelchair-bound spies or any blind spies, the image they use, I don't necessarily mind the idea of them taking, stock images and painting themselves as culturally diverse, but at the same time, wouldn't it have been cheaper and easier just to get 20 random office people to actually, like, come together to pose for a photograph and use that as the header? Considering
but again, then you would be outing those 20 office people as spies. And you don't want to dox your own people when you're, a murderous spy agency.
Yeah, but not everyone employed at CIA is going to be clandestine or undercover. I mean, some of them, I promise you, there's at least one of these people who have CIA operative listed on their Facebook profile as their employment. There's bound to be, because people are stupid, and they don't stop being stupid. If anything, they only become more stupid when they get hired by the CIA.
Well, I just imagine it's one of those things where, just like working in the IRS, you don't want to get doxxed for that.
Well, why would someone want to dox a government employee, I think is a fair question. It's obviously because they're up to all sorts of shady, immoral things. So they don't want. Look, if you're ashamed to do something, maybe just don't do it. And that's the
But
message.
it pays so well.
It does.
And I'm really doing the right thing. You just don't understand that this is what we have to do because this is the price of civilization.
Well, if the price of civilization is that we have to have this murderous gang overseeing us and terrorizing us, I meant to say tyrannizing, then it's not very civilized, this civilization.
Well,
There's
lack
nothing-
of civilization is just the price that we pay to live in a civilized society.
Well, another price we pay is all sorts of tax money to go to diversity training programs that don't actually hire diverse people. Instead, they just use stock images and create ridiculous reports called things like Annual Demographic Report for Fiscal Year 2020, Hiring and Retention of Minorities, Women, and Persons with Disabilities, which...
Well, I want to state for the record that I am absolutely for this use of tax dollars. In fact, I think they should shuffle 90% of their entire budget into doing more of this.
Well, it's certainly less
More
harmful.
Shutterstock agents.
It's certainly less harmful than what they generally use the money for. That is true.
Exactly. I mean, if your budget is X, I want 90% of X to be doing this.
I would rather just them not get that budget.
Oh, well, that'd be nice.
Tucker Carlson says this report is unreadable, and with a title like that, I tend to believe him. But at the same time, I'm curious to actually read it now because I want to know, do they actually have any disabled people, any blind people working in these spy agencies?
Well, they definitely had a few of them coming out on YouTube videos.
That's true, they did.
I suffer from anxiety.
Oh, but
Gee, I wonder.
But those were probably just actors anyway, based on this. I mean, who knows?
That would seem to be the case.
We can't trust anything the government says. Do you trust the government? If so, tell us why. 603-283-6160.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references. Count. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. Police in Haiti have killed at least 4 gunmen and arrested a number of others suspected of murdering President Jovenel Moïse. They say they're still looking for other people who planned the assassination. FSN's Rachel Silverman has more.
At least 4 gunmen have been killed and 6 more detained in the assassination of the Haitian president. Haitian officials say 1, perhaps 2 of the suspects are Americans. The president was shot dead at his home early on Wednesday. His wife was seriously injured and she's been flown to Florida for treatment in a hospital. Angry civilians have joined in the hunt for the assassins, capturing some suspects themselves and setting fire to vehicles thought to have been used in the attack. The interim Haitian Prime Minister has appealed for calm and has declared a state of siege. Rachel Silverman, Oakland, California.
The White House says U.S. President Joe Biden urged his Russian counterpart to take action on ransomware groups. That's after another cyber attack took up to 1,500 businesses offline last weekend. FSN's Washington correspondent Giles Gibson reports.
When the two leaders met in Geneva last month, Joe Biden warned Vladimir Putin about cyber attacks from Russia-based hackers on US infrastructure and companies. Just over 3 weeks later, he once again urged Putin to, quote, take action to disrupt ransomware groups operating in Russia, according to a summary of the call released by the White House on Friday. Cybersecurity researchers have blamed an affiliate of the REvil group for the latest global ransomware attack, which infected thousands of computers all over the world. Russian officials have repeatedly denied any links between hacking groups and the Kremlin. Giles Gibson, Washington.
Biden also confirmed the US withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan will be complete by the end of August. However, on Friday, the Pentagon said the Taliban is making gains in the country. FSN's US correspondent Nick Harper reports.
President Joe Biden had already set September the 11th as the date by which all US troops would be out of the country. Now he says it'll be done by August the 31st. When asked by reporters, though, he rejected the idea that the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan was now inevitable.
The Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force, against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
But with the militant group continuing to make advances and with more than 1,000 Afghan troops recently fleeing the country, there are concerns for the future of Afghanistan once the US troops leave. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Cases of the COVID-19 Delta variant are spreading throughout the world, including in Australia, where in the state of New South Wales, numbers jumped again this week. A stay-at-home order covering more than 5 million residents in the Greater Sydney, Wollongong and Central Coast has been extended to July 16th. FSN's Sean Bindley reports.
With the message seemingly not getting through to people about being tested and isolating when they have symptoms, the state's lockdown is on the verge of being extended beyond next week. New South Wales Health Minister Brad Hazzard has pleaded with residents to stay at home unless it's absolutely necessary.
I can't tell you how concerned I am now as Health Minister the way this Delta virus is moving through our community. We were told some years ago to be alert and not alarmed. Right now, here in Greater Sydney as Health Minister, I am both alert and alarmed.
In Brisbane, I'm Sean Bindley.
The Tokyo Olympics will be held without spectators in stadiums after a state of emergency was declared in Japan's capital. Coronavirus case numbers in the country are climbing once again, with just over 2 weeks to go until the opening ceremony. Our correspondent Phoebe Amoroso is in Tokyo.
We heard from Japan's Olympic minister saying that in the name of safety, they would put this cap on spectators. IOC Thomas Bach as well saying that it's a responsibility to the Japanese people. It's important also to note that many people here have still yet to be vaccinated. Only around 15% of the population have been fully inoculated. Japan's vaccination program was very slow to roll out. It's really picked up speed, so much that demand has outstripped supply and there have been a few cancellations. It's slowed down a bit. Prime Minister Suga is saying that, okay, yes, this is the fourth state of emergency that Tokyo is facing and vaccines are the way out of this loop. He expects that 40% of the population will be vaccinated by August the 22nd when the state of emergency is set to expire. But that is, of course, after the Olympic Games.
I'm Caroline Malone in Washington, and that was the Week in Review.
And in a surprise announcement this morning, U.S. Deputy Surgeon General Greg Paulson stated that, quote,
It's fine to smoke cigarettes if you only smoke while drinking. The Deputy Surgeon General has called a press conference to discuss the shocking findings, which began just moments ago. Let's go live to that now.
Was there a particular study this report was based on?
Look, that determination was made after considering that someone who only smokes when at bars or parties ends up smoking maybe 15 cigarettes a month, while regular smokers are smoking 150 to 200 cigarettes each week. So we feel that it's just obvious that as long as you don't actually buy the cigarettes and you only smoke them while consuming the alcohol, then the risks of getting lung cancer are basically mostly negligible. Just common sense.
This announcement comes on the heels of the Surgeon General's last announcement that drinking and driving is fine if you ate a lot that day or if it's a route you take all the time sober. Moving on, the Japanese Space Agency has announced plans to put a schoolgirl on the moon by 2015.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 if you want to join the discussion. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
And Bigless Mountaineer.
And I've been forgetting to do that every single segment thus far tonight. I'm really, really good at my job sometimes. But, you know, I was distracted by just the hilarity of anyone on the supposed liberal side, anyone on the left, cheering at the idea of having a diverse spy agency when you would expect a true liberal to be more about eliminating that spy agency altogether, which is certainly what I would like to see. But then again, there's plenty of arguments that libertarians are, in fact, the real liberal.
As long as you paint a rainbow on the bomb, it's okay to kill brown people with it. It's just science.
That does seem to be, you know, their basic argument. But let's go to the phones. We've got Dustin calling from Kansas, I guess. Dustin, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah. I was hoping to explain some ways that this government's anarchy, atheist, and antichrist for supporting the Tea Party. Anarchy, the military hasn't been able to protect even Kuwait's oil field, the people from Syria's chemical weapons. And if it was Osama bin Laden guilty, that the military's mistake about Saddam Hussein, and then not even able to protect Afghanistan. There's the atheist that the government has Amish religion that's supposed to support the animals, and they've got duck meat, turkey meat, dinosaur bites, dino bites, and then blue buffalo about the atheism, and then the antichrist about the government.
Dustin, have you had a few drinks tonight?
I am taking some muscle relaxers, but
okay.
The antichrist, because the government's harmed all four races and the females also, but on top of that,
okay, I got a couple of questions here. Okay, hold on, I got a couple of questions. First of all, why should the U.S. military be protecting oil fields in Kuwait or Afghanistan or any of these other places that you mentioned?
That was the intention for George Bush Sr.'s deployment, as it was to protect the oil fields, but they were unsuccessful. But it was the military mission statement.
Okay. Follow-up question. What does any of this have to do with atheism or the Antichrist?
Yeah, you lost me there.
Atheist. This government's Antichrist because it has the Amish religion.
The government has the Amish religion.
It set up the Amish religion. That's
the government set up the
help
Amish
the
religion.
veterinarians. It's like Italy, where the founder Michelangelo set up the religion of Catholicism in Italy, or
So Michelangelo was the founder of Catholicism.
Dustin, thank you so much for the call tonight. Dude, nothing.
How many muscle relaxers did you take?
I don't know how many he took, but I did not take enough to listen to that any further.
Yeah. Dino Bites. Wait, what?
Isn't that something that gets advertised on our show?
Yeah, I think it's a dog food.
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't know what
that's
it is.
Dinovite.
Oh,
that's Dinovite.
Oh.
Dino Bites. Now, is that Flintstone vitamins? Like what?
What he did specifically
like turkey
mention
and
dinosaurs.
Dinobites. It's like wait. So they're atheist because they are eating dinosaur meat.
And,
all right, I'd like to see your sources here.
I would have. I don't want to see his sources that Michelangelo created Catholicism, right? I mean, that was just the pinnacle of things he was saying that didn't make sense. And it was at that point that I was like, okay, yeah, I cannot hear any more of this. I mean, if you want to talk conspiracy theories and how you think there's, this Antichrist takeover going on, whatever, however you wish to characterize it, I'm fine with that. But, make sense with it. I mean, even if you're incorrect, at least be able to string a coherent thought together.
There's absolutely arguments that this government is antichrist, depending on how you want to define that term.
Well, they are as un-Christ-like as an organization could get.
Indeed. But
when
those
Christians
arguments...
say the Antichrist, that's not what they mean. I mean, if they were to mean that, then not just about every, but many, many Christians in the United States would in fact be antichrists. Because they're notoriously un-Christ-like.
There is that. And I mean, if an antichrist were to show up, I'm sure they'd immediately rocket to the top of government.
Well, let's keep going. We've got Altar, who's listening on KIVA in Albuquerque. Altar, I guess I pronounced that correctly. You're on Free Talk Live.
Oh, yeah, actually you did. That was my former call sign.
Okay, what's on your mind tonight?
And having been a member of the Army's only counterterrorist unit, we don't need to say the name on air.
Okay.
But when it comes to forced vaccinations, I saw this coming right about the time of the COVID outbreak. At the time, I was living with a good friend of mine in the South Valley. And I told her, I said, if the next phase isn't going after people that don't have a tan line on their face showing what good socialists we are by wearing our masks, which we now know they do no good, the next phase is going to be forced vaccinations. Now, my good female friend, she works for the Forest Service. She does budgets for them. And, of course, she said, oh, you're crazy. No, that can't happen. I said, no. As I told her, I said, Nola, you don't understand. This, just like when 9/11 happened, if people were smarter, especially people with a Masonic background, they would have seen that Patriot Act was almost word for word an exact duplicate of the Nazi Constitution of 1933. If you don't believe me, Google it yourself.
I can't just Google things, so I'm going to have to take your word for it.
I'm definitely going to be Googling it now. I'll tell you, I would not be surprised if you're right. The USA Patriot Act is like the most disturbing piece of legislation I have ever seen. And that is saying a lot, because I've seen some really disturbing legislation pass.
One of the few things that the film Zeitgeist did correctly, now it did a lot incorrectly, but one of the few things it did correctly was characterize a particular statement that they initially made it seem was said by Adolf Hitler, but in actuality it turned out to be George W. Bush who had said that. And it's when you see that the reality of what the Bush administration was doing, what they were planning, and what they were actually up to sets in, right? Because those words could have easily come out of Adolf. They would have made total sense coming out of Hitler's mouth, but they didn't. They came out of George W. Bush's mouth.
Well, and right now we are seeing the application of the Patriot Act. Because when that came out, I'm like, guys, are you seeing this? Like, we are all potential, like, they can just label us, and then, boom, all of our rights are gone.
Yeah, and the NDAA of 2012 only exacerbated the problem. That allowed them to strip away your U.S. citizenship, whereupon the U.S. Constitution no longer protected you, and you no longer have a right to a trial as a U.S. citizen.
Yep. And now we're just seeing that come to fruition, because I knew they were going to use it against what the so-called domestic terrorists. And okay, well, now they've just labeled you, oh, you didn't vote for the current president? You might be a domestic terrorist then.
Or they go even further.
That is right.
Right? I mean, now we have Facebook essentially saying that everyone is a domestic extremist or whatever terminology they use. But beyond that, I forgot what the beyond that part of that actually was. But Ottar, thank you so much for the call tonight. It's alarming what the U.S. government gave itself the authority to do, and most people don't really seem to pay any attention to it. But yes, they do. They have given themselves the legal authority to drag you out of your home, throw you in Guantanamo Bay, and keep you there in secrecy, denying you access to attorneys, or just to drop a bomb on your house. They've given themselves that authority. What are your thoughts? Is that right? 603-283-6160. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover springs her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 if you want to join the discussion. That's 603-283-6160. And I want to say thank you to Derek, who is tonight's amplifier. He's a gold level amplifier, which means that Derek is giving $10 per month to the AMP program. Of course, we don't ask that much. All we ask is $5 per month to join the AMP program. AMP stands for Advertise, Market, and Promote. It's money that we use strictly to advertise, market, and promote Free Talk Live. So if you value the ideas of someone being able to call into a nationally syndicated radio show and spewing off about how Michelangelo created Catholicism and how the U.S. government created the Amish religion and they eat turkeys and dinosaurs or whatever, which you may not necessarily value, you may still want to join the AMP program. That's amp.freetalklive.com. Derek, thanks so much.
It's definitely proof of concept. Like, hey, if he can call in here with that, you can call in here with whatever piece of, like, really good information you have come across.
Well, yeah, I mean, sure, it wasn't the topic that bothered me or the fact that he was wrong. It was that he was blatantly wrong and he couldn't string a thought together.
Yeah.
I assumed he was drunk, but it turned out he was on muscle relaxers. But it's a shame if someone out there believes that, you know, there is this atheistic takeover thing going on that deals with Amish people and Catholicism and the Antichrist and all that. I would love to hear about it.
Yeah, and that's an interesting combo. Like, you are both atheist and Antichrist.
And Amish.
How? Just how?
I don't know, man.
Well, and honestly, like, the first part, you know, he got through the first part, and I really expected him to be about as coherent as your average person is.
It seemed that way at first.
I mean, I'm going to tear apart your argument because I'm used to tearing apart arguments because people don't really think that well because they haven't been trained in things like formal logic. I mean, it used to be that if you were going to receive an actual education, then as a child, as soon as you had learned grammar, you would learn formal logic so that you could actually put arguments together in your head and see if they made sense.
By far the greatest example of how bad the American school system is that nowhere in those 13 years does a person learn the logical absolutes. The foundation of all knowledge and the ability to know a thing never once mentioned in the education system.
Well, and apparently it is just such dangerous information to know when something is a fallacy that they only let the college people learn that, and even then, only some of them.
Yeah, it's all a racket. I mean, the American school system very clearly not designed to produce intelligent, independently capable, people capable of independent thought.
Or really anything else for that matter. Because, I mean, you leave that system after 12 years and you are good for absolutely nothing, which is really unfortunate.
So you brought in this article tonight about Ecuador and Chevron, and evidently Chevron, that's the oil company, they got sued and they lost like a $9.5 billion lawsuit.
That they did.
I can imagine this upset them quite a bit. That's a lot of money.
It upset them to the point that they're like, yeah, we're not paying.
Oh.
Yeah.
So they're just like, well, screw you, Ecuador?
Pretty much.
Okay.
So their response to this was, your lead guy that was the prosecutor did fraud. That's how you got this. Yeah, it was fraud. It's not that we actually did these things that you very clearly actually did. And it's not that all these people have all these conditions that they clearly actually have. No, it's because this guy paid this guy, and that's why it's fraud, so we're not paying. But it gets so much worse than that.
Well, it couldn't get any better from there.
Right. Yeah, so this is from the American Prospect. The government gave big oil the power to prosecute its biggest critic. And for those not terribly familiar with the way our legal system works, people, and for that matter corporations, are not allowed to charge you with crimes. You can sue someone, that's civil court, but like we're not allowed to bring someone up on charges. You and I aren't, and neither is Chevron, except for here.
Well, presumably, if you caught someone committing a crime, you could exercise a citizen's arrest, but even then you can't actually formally charge them.
Well, I'm not sure if citizens' arrests actually like get held up, but yeah, you definitely cannot charge them with a crime.
You probably have to actually catch them in the act of committing that crime for it to hold up. But I don't know. I've never attempted one. I would just mind my own business unless someone was, being physically hurt.
Yeah, I definitely don't trust our court system to keep me out of jail for keeping people safe by a citizen's arrest.
Excellent point. So let's get into this article.
Yeah. A judge empowered a private law firm to criminally prosecute Chevron's nemesis. And now the firm has admitted it worked directly for Chevron.
Hold on. So they hired a private attorney to actually create criminal charges against the who exactly?
Against the human rights lawyer that had just won the case in Ecuador.
Okay. So
yeah, this is like the weirdest story because this particular article is like 5 layers deep in investigating this thing, but it's like, wow, just. So
it sounds like a mess.
Oh, it is an absolute mess.
I mean, anytime you have a giant oil company able to hire an attorney to not sue someone, but to bring criminal charges against them, there's very clearly a problem or a breakdown in whatever court system they use.
Well, and so here's the thing: this judge couldn't get the federal prosecutor to take the case. He's like, no, I'm not doing it. So instead of, well, I guess we can't do it then, he hires this private prosecutor to do the case.
And the private prosecutor agrees. So, I mean, presumably it's legal in Ecuador to hire a private prosecutor?
Well, no, this is all in the U.S., so this is all after the Ecuador case had already been they did the whole case in Ecuador. Chevron loses. They owe $9.5 billion to all of these people that have these medical conditions from them just digging pits to pour oil into. And they're like, no, we're going to sue you in the American federal court for fraud. And that means we won't have to pay.
Does the article get into any of this backstory? Because I have no idea what any of this is about.
Like I said, this thing is deep. And one of the articles that I had to do to get here was how the federal judge didn't disclose the fact that he owns a bunch of Chevron stock, as well as a bunch of other oil company stock. And that's the thing, if you find out that these oil companies are actually going to be held accountable for the terrible things that they do, then the oil company stocks, all of them, become a little less safe.
So let's make sure I understand this correctly. Chevron was sued in Ecuador. They lost the lawsuit, and the human rights attorney that, argued for the prosecutors or the plaintiff, whatever.
Yep, one Stephen Donziger.
Chevron is now attempting to impose criminal charges against by using a private prosecutor in the United States.
Appointed by a federal judge in the U.S., yeah.
Wow, this mess only gets worse, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this? How do you fix a system that's that corrupt? Or do you even bother? 603-283-6160 is the call-in line. You can weigh in. 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live.
On March 16th this year, government task forces violently raided the New Hampshire Bitcoin Embassy, the Mighty Moose Mart, the homes of Aria DiMezzo, Andy and Renee Spinella, Colleen Fordham, a grandmother, and perhaps most relevant, the studios of Free Talk Live. The Crypto Six were arrested. 4 were released on bail conditions, but Ian Freeman was held hostage for 69 days. Rich Paul, also known as Nobody, remains captive. We've consulted attorneys who say no crime even appears to have been committed. But that didn't stop the Joint Thug Task Force from ripping out wires from our broadcast stacks, taking Free Talk Live off the air, resulting in a violation of our and your First Amendment rights. You can visit thecrypto6.com to help, but as importantly, contact other media and tell them about this outrage. This case is likely to set precedent for cryptocurrency use well into your future. Help our fight for liberty and financial freedom at thecrypto6.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with The Week in Review. Police in Haiti have killed at least 4 gunmen and arrested a number of others suspected of murdering President Jovenel Moïse. They say they're still looking for other people who planned the assassination. FSN's Rachel Silverman has more.
At least 4 gunmen have been killed and 6 more detained in the assassination of the Haitian president. Haitian officials say 1, perhaps 2 of the suspects are Americans. The president was shot dead at his home early on Wednesday. His wife was seriously injured and she's been flown to Florida for treatment in a hospital. Angry civilians have joined in the hunt for the assassins, capturing some suspects themselves and setting fire to vehicles thought to have been used in the attack. The interim Haitian Prime Minister has appealed for calm and has declared a state of siege. Rachel Silverman, Oakland, California.
The White House says U.S. President Joe Biden urged his Russian counterpart to take action on ransomware groups. That's after another cyber attack took up to 1,500 businesses offline last weekend. FSN's Washington correspondent Giles Gibson reports.
When the two leaders met in Geneva last month, Joe Biden warned Vladimir Putin about cyber attacks from Russia-based hackers on U.S. infrastructure and companies. Just over 3 weeks later, he once again urged Putin to, quote, take action to disrupt ransomware groups operating in Russia, according to a summary of the call released by the White House on Friday. Cybersecurity researchers have blamed an affiliate of the REvil group for the latest global ransomware attack, which infected thousands of computers all over the world. Russian officials have repeatedly denied any links between hacking groups and the Kremlin. Giles Gibson, Washington.
Biden also confirmed the U.S. withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan will be complete by the end of August. However, on Friday, the Pentagon said the Taliban is making gains in the country. FSN's U.S. correspondent Nick Harper reports.
President Joe Biden had already set September the 11th as the date by which all US troops would be out of the country. Now he says it'll be done by August the 31st. When asked by reporters, though, he rejected the idea that the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan was now inevitable.
The Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped as any army in the world, and an air force, against something like 75,000 Taliban. It is not inevitable.
But with the militant group continuing to make advances and with more than 1,000 Afghan troops recently fleeing the country, there are concerns for the future of Afghanistan once the US troops leave. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 if you want to join the discussion. 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
And Peakless Mountaineer.
And we're just now getting into, after 2 relatively humorous stories, we're now getting into one that's humorous for entirely different reasons. Yeah. Just because the level of insanity that it's operating at is unparalleled.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, this is the kind of story that you pull out of a dystopian cyberpunk novel about how the corporations have taken over the government.
So to recap, because it's a mess, Chevron did some stupid stuff like oil companies tend to do, and they destroyed some environments and maybe poisoned a few 100,000 people. You know, your typical big oil company stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they got sued for it, which is relatively unusual. I don't think BP's ever gotten sued for any of the environmental destruction they've caused.
It is unusual, and that's the thing. This is why he sued them in Ecuador, because Ecuador doesn't have the same level of protectionism for corporations that we do here in the U.S.
I assumed it happened in Ecuador because Ecuador was the country where this damage took place in.
Right.
Okay.
In this case, yeah, that's absolutely correct.
But it's Chevron, so there's probably a handful of companies or a dozen countries, where they, could bring similar.
That's exactly my point. I mean, they're doing this kind of, poisoning the ever-loving crap out of people all over the world. But, I mean, in the U.S., when they poison people and you can prove that they've poisoned people, it just never sees its day in court.
No, I recall reading about Bayer, the aspirin company. They make a number of other, pharmaceuticals as well. They released some tainted aspirin that had, I think, HIV particles in it. It gave people HIV if they took it. And they realized this. But instead of destroying the medication, they shipped it off and sold it in South American countries, knowingly, because they just didn't want to eat that loss, right?
Right.
And they were never sued for this. They never had criminal charges brought against them for this. They were 100% protected by the American government.
And this is what happens when you have corporations. It acts as a legal shield.
And yes, someone made the decision to send this HIV-infected aspirin to South America. That person is criminally liable for that.
Honestly, the people or person, because it's usually like a board kind of decision, every person that was involved in that decision needs to go to jail.
Yes, because they knowingly gave people aspirin that they knew was going to cause HIV.
Yeah, you knowingly poisoned people with a virus. That is a criminal act. You go to jail for that.
So, and that's typical for these giant corporations. They all engage in this sort of evil behavior. Chevron, of course, is one of these mega oil companies that just wreaks havoc on environments and on local populations, and they don't care.
Well, and the incentives are all in the wrong direction, because the board that decided to do that, they didn't lose any money. Even if you sue the company that did this, because obviously they're not getting prosecuted and the individuals that made the decision aren't getting prosecuted, but even suing them, it's the company that loses the money, not the people that actually made the decision. So why would they be responsible when you have a setup like this?
Yeah, it's all the more reason that we should abolish the corporate system.
Absolutely.
For sure. So they were sued for $9.5 billion. They lost the lawsuit in Ecuador.
Yeah, it gets into this. So in recent years, the American... trigger warning, a little bit of leftiness here. They're going to talk about the climate crisis, and I think that's nonsense. But in recent years, the American government has given fossil fuel industry hundreds of billions of dollars in subsidies and opened up wide swaths of public land for drilling. Now, as the climate crisis worsens, a federal judge has given a private corporate law firm with ties to the fossil fuel companies the power to criminally prosecute one of the industry's biggest foes, a lawyer who notched one of history's biggest legal victories against a major oil company. In 2011, Stephen Donziger led the legal team that secured a $9.5 billion judgment against Chevron for polluting the Amazon rainforest in Ecuador. Chevron has not paid that claim, and last year a judge appointed a private law firm to criminally prosecute Donziger for a contempt charge in a countersuit filed by Chevron in federal court in Manhattan.
So how's that for your separation of powers, right? Where a judge can just appoint a prosecutor from a private law firm, which, of course, ends up, we learn later, that the judge has significant shares of Chevron stock, and the prosecutor, this private law firm, was pretty much working directly for Chevron.
Yeah, and if anyone out there wants to dig into this, do some Googling. That's Donziger is the guy who's getting hit with all of this. And, it is just crazy because, it turns out the Chevron people actually got the idea to sue him for this from this federal judge. And then when they do sue him for this, the federal judge, insists that he oversee it instead of it, going to the random pool like it's supposed to.
So in the United States, if you're close enough with a judge or the judge has invested enough money in your corporation, you can have this judge appoint a private attorney and bring charges against someone you don't like.
Your private attorney, as it turns out.
That is fascism if I've ever heard it.
Absolutely.
Or corporatism, or however you wish to characterize it. At any rate, it needs to be brought to an immediate end.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, he brought this to a federal prosecutor first. The federal prosecutor said, no, I'm not going to prosecute that. So instead of like, oh, well, guess we can't do anything. No. Instead, he hires Chevron's lawyers to prosecute on behalf of the federal government.
So what are they trying to prosecute this guy for?
Fraud and contempt of court.
But Chevron is the one refusing to pay $9.5 billion in the... So they are guilty of contempt of court in Ecuador.
Yup.
But they don't... Now, how is this guy guilty of contempt of court?
So they charged him with fraud, which, like, it's another one of those weird things where it's like, this is way beyond your jurisdiction, because, like, what they are charging him with was basically, like, doing a setup for the court in Ecuador. So, in theory, he defrauded the Ecuadorian court, which isn't a matter you should see in the U.S. at all anyway.
No, that's something you would take to the Ecuadorian court.
Right. So this Donziger guy, he appeals this fraud charge because obviously that's ridiculous. And because he appeals it, he gets slapped with a contempt of court charge.
What?
Yes.
So he was hit with fraud in the United States government by being prosecuted by a private law firm appointed by a judge on behalf of Chevron because this guy beat them in Ecuador, was found guilty, presumably, of fraud, and appealed it, and was hit with contempt of court charges for appealing the decision.
Yeah, hit with contempt of court for making an appeal.
That's not a precedent that anyone should allow to stand.
It hasn't happened before. It's completely bizarre to be hit with contempt of court for filing an appeal.
Well, contempt of court, can you appeal the contempt of court? I don't think you can, because nothing in the legal system actually gives judges the legal authority to hold people in contempt. It's just considered an inherent power of a judge. So there's no actual check or balance against it. If you get hit with the contempt of court charge, you're just screwed.
Yeah.
There's no appeal process because the judge has decided that you're in contempt. Well, what is contempt, Your Honor? Is a fouling an appeal? Really?
Apparently.
That's scary. That's not a good precedent.
Yeah, no, this is absolutely terrifying. And I mean, if this keeps going through unchallenged, you know it's going to get expanded.
What are your thoughts on this? Should we allow contempt of court to even stand? And if it's going to exist, shouldn't there be some sort of appeal process that, you don't take to a judge because a judge is going to disagree with whatever the previous judge said? 603-283-6160. You're welcome to weigh in. It's Free Talk Live.
A congressman recently revealed that legislation totaling 2,900 pages and involving more than $1 trillion was available to members of Congress for less than 48 hours to study and consider. That's over 60 pages of legislation per hour. Do you think anyone read the entire bill? I'm Jim Babka with DownsizeDC.org. Consider a proposal buried in a 3,200-page, $388 billion bill, which would have empowered committee chairmen or their agents to examine Americans' tax returns. When this horrible provision came to light, no one claimed to know how it got into the bill. One congressman questioned said, "I didn't write it, I didn't approve it, I wasn't even consulted." If your attorney represented you this way, he might be disbarred. But this is how Congress represents you every day. That's why DownsizeDC.org has created the Read the Bills Act. You can force Congress to read their bills before they pass them at DownsizeDC.org.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit shiresociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at shiresociety.com. That's shiresociety.com. The LRN.FM's social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com. You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. If you want to join the discussion, that's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
And Peakless Mountaineer.
And we're getting into this mess of Chevron and Ecuador and just blatant open corruption on the part of U.S. officials, especially this judge, the only person I've heard...
Kaplan. Kaplan, and oh wow, is this guy corrupt?
The only person in this story who isn't corrupt that I've heard about so far, other than the guy who's being charged with all of this nonsense, is probably the prosecutor who declined to bring charges against this guy in the first place. So good on that prosecutor.
Yeah, and I need to make a little correction here. So what he was appealing, when he got charged with this stuff, they demanded to see they demanded that he turn over his laptop and his cell phone. And he's like, no, that has sensitive information on all of my clients that I just represented. I'm not going to turn it over because you think I have fraud here. So he appealed that demand. Okay. And his appeal of the demand of his cell phone and laptop that has all this sensitive information on his clients the fact that he appealed that is what got him slapped with contempt of court.
That's still horrifying.
It's absolutely bizarre. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Like, you are allowed to make like, if you fill out the darn paperwork the way you're supposed to, the way that you went to the really expensive school to learn how to do it, that's specifically how you don't get a contempt of court charge.
It sounds like the judge should hold himself in contempt, because it sounds like he's the one with contempt for the legal process. And of course, I'm no fan of the legal process myself, but I'm also not a judge sworn to uphold it and to obey it.
Mm-hmm.
But the judge here has done some extremely unorthodox things, including basically seeking a private law firm after a guy, and allowing this private law firm to prosecute him and then hold him in contempt.
Yeah, and like, this is the first time I have ever heard of a private law firm representing the federal government. I didn't know that was possible.
It shouldn't be possible. The U.S. government has no shortage of attorneys. Let one of them do it. And if you can't find one of them to do it, that's probably your indicator that you shouldn't be doing it.
Mm-hmm. But I guess this judge is like, nope, you don't get to second guess my decisions. I'll just outsource this to a company that works for Chevron. Right, that's justice.
Extremely high levels of corruption here.
Yeah, and I mean, there's another like whole branch of this where he like hires his buddies to take the disposition, and they charge.
What does that mean? I'm not a legal person.
Right. So the disposition is like the sort of initial like gathering information and making your plea kind of stuff.
Okay.
So he hires his, and this is just a whole different branch. Kaplan, Judge Kaplan.
Okay.
Hires a couple of his old buddies from law school, one of whom is charging a quote-unquote discounted rate of $630 per hour, and the other one who is charging so much that they won't let you know how much it is. And
the $630 per hour, that's the discounted rate?
That's the discounted rate, and it's a small enough bill that they'll let you know how much it is.
I'm trying to put this into perspective based on, my experience with attorneys. I've gotten significantly more experience with attorneys in the last year than one would like. I have yet to encounter any attorney that asks for pay like that.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're friends to a federal judge. And so, he appoints them as, I love these titles, special masters. That is literally...
Hold on, what?
Special master is literally the title that you get to do this.
To take down the disposition?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that always the title,
Well,
or is that because they're charging $630 per hour?
Well, when you bring someone...
And what is that discounted from?
I know, right?
It's got to be down from $700, a 10% discount.
Yeah, there you go.
That's got to be it. Still $700 per hour. I mean, but when you're a multi-billion-dollar oil company and you lose a $9.5 billion lawsuit, now keep in mind that this isn't going to change the outcome of their lawsuit in Ecuador. It's just going to punish the guy who won the suit against them.
Exactly.
Which is what they want, because they're a big oil company. They're used to getting their way.
But it gives the oil company something to point to say, see, we don't have to pay it because it was not obtained correctly.
But it seems that it was, right? And if they have any issue with the way that this case played out, then they should appeal it in Ecuador, not in the United States court system. And they certainly shouldn't go out completely outside of the lawsuit part of the American justice system.
Oh, and I'm certain beyond a shadow of a doubt that they tried to appeal it in Ecuador, and Ecuador said no. So they're like, well, I'm not going to pay this. How do I do damage control on the fact that I'm not going to pay this? Oh, well, our clients will trust the U.S. Federal court system more than the Ecuadorian court system, so I'll just get them to say that they were making the wrong decision.
And who knows how all of this is ultimately going to play out, but is there more on this?
Oh, there's so much more.
Because it's just layers of corruption.
It
just
really is.
being battered against this guy, ultimately because he was successful in suing Chevron for, destroying the environment in Ecuador.
And causing an enormous number of people an enormous number of medical problems, and a lot of whom died from them.
So Chevron killed people in Ecuador, and this guy brought a lawsuit against them and won.
Mm-hmm. And they said, no, we are above the law of Ecuador, and we're going to use our contacts in the law in the U.S. to sort of do damage control on the fact that we're just not going to pay you.
So what's next in this story of corruption and lies?
Let's see here. Private law firm to criminally prosecute Don Ziegler for contempt charge in a countersuit filed by Chevron in federal court in Manhattan. That law firm, Seward & Kissel LLP, has represented Chevron itself as recently as 2018, according to recent court documents. Put another way, the government has taken the extraordinary step of giving prosecutorial power to a law firm that has worked for Chevron, and is allowing that prosecutorial power to be aimed at Chevron's chief adversary, who has been under house arrest for 332 days. Now, this is a very old article at this point. It's been over 700 days that he's been under house arrest for this nonsense.
Why is he under house arrest?
'Cause he's clearly a threat. He might go defrauding people. We can't let him, get groceries without permission.
That's insane that Chevron would even have the ability to weaponize the U.S. court system against someone in this capacity.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk a lot about how evil corporations are and how the lines between corporations and governments have just completely gotten merged, but erased. This isn't even erasing those lines. This is one entity actively becoming the other entity. If Chevron can do this, then there's nothing stopping any other corporation from doing it. And just like that, we're not being ruled by the, quote, rule of law, however that may or may not exist in the United States. We're being ruled by corporations that can just get their buddy judge who they go golfing with to appoint their preferred attorney. To say, oh yeah, this is the attorney that we used 2 years ago, and the judge says, okay, that's the attorney we're going to use here. We're going to prosecute this guy who had the audacity to sue you and to beat you in court.
Yeah, and I mean, usually
this judge should be in prison.
Oh, I could not agree more. And I mean, usually these companies are at least
after a fair trial.
Yes, absolutely. And, by my personal, preference, tarred and feathered, after a trial.
Which, it's worth pointing out, is not lethal, and it doesn't even have to cause harm. You can use cold tar.
Yeah, there you go.
But see, that was something I didn't know.
Nice and embarrassing because you have made yourself look like this.
See, I didn't know that. When they say, pour hot tar on people, I thought it was this boiling hot tar. I thought it killed them. But in fact, almost no one died from it. It was just it was embarrassing. And you can even use cold tar and cause not even any sort of burn whatsoever.
There you go.
So I didn't know that, but that was something I learned recently.
But yeah, he needs to be tried and he needs to be punished for being Chevron, for being the extended arm of a corporation instead of a government.
What are your thoughts? How do we address this extremely high level of corruption? This is Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the
Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagdi Dave. Italy are the winners of the Euro 2020 Championship after beating England 3-2 on penalties. Both sides had drawn 1-1 before the tense shootout that ultimately ended in heartbreak for the Three Lions. Laura Macon-Asherwood reports on the dramatic final.
Well, the disappointment here in London is palpable. Rather than seeing people flooding out of pubs, out of their homes to celebrate on the streets, as we saw at the end of that semi-final match, instead people are walking home quite subdued, really. This was a match for which people were really hopeful that it would finally end that title drought for England. They hadn't won a major international tournament since 1966, 55 years ago, but it was not to be. Instead, Italy are Euro champions, winning on penalties 3-2. But it's not just been about disappointment tonight. There was obviously hope at the start. There were messages from Her Majesty the Queen, also from the Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Richard Branson says it's the dawn of a new space age after he flew to the edge of space in his own Virgin Galactic spacecraft. It was the company's first fully crewed test flight, and it rocketed more than 50 miles above the Earth before gliding back safely to the runway at Spaceport America in New Mexico.
3, 2, 1, release, release, release. Clean release. Ignition. Good rocket motor burn.
That was the moment a Virgin Galactic controller read the countdown to the release of the Unity spaceplane from its mothership. 70-year-old Branson joined 5 crew members for the flight, which took about an hour from takeoff to landing. He's also won the Battle of the Billionaires, getting there before Amazon's Jeff Bezos, who has a trip scheduled for 20th of July in his Blue Origin rocket ship. Jeff Bezos congratulated Richard Branson and the crew in an Instagram post, adding, "Can't wait to join the club." And Elon Musk, whose SpaceX program is also working towards commercial space tourism, was one of many people who attended the launch. Virgin Galactic plans to start taking paying customers into space next year, and several hundred people have already reserved their spot, with tickets costing up to $250,000. Several states in the western part of America and Canada are experiencing extreme heat and wildfires, which are burning more than 300,000 acres of land. California, Oregon, Idaho and British Columbia in Canada were under evacuation orders, and millions of people have been warned to take precautions against the brutal heat. In Death Valley in southeastern California, temperatures soared to 128 degrees Fahrenheit or 53 degrees Celsius on Saturday, according to the National Weather Service. The Bureau of Land Management also announced that in Arizona, 2 firefighters died in an aircraft accident while they were working to control what's being called the Cedar Basin fire. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the corruption probe that has investigated Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, already facing intense criticism in the country over his complete failure even to recognise the threat posed by COVID-19. The probe's outcome threatens to put a crimp in the Brazilian leader's quest for re-election.
The last few weeks or last month or so, you've seen a real decline in his support. So now the vast majority of Brazilians are no longer supporting him. him. And a lot of the establishment business is looking for someone to back.
Shannon O'Neill is a senior fellow for Latin American Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations.
He has, over the last year and a half, downplayed the severity of COVID. What he's in hot water for right now is there have been ongoing congressional investigations into the handling of COVID. We have seen just over the last week or so, someone from the health official in ministry come out with allegations that there was trying to illegally purchase particular vaccines, that there's corruption involved, and this is starting to reach throughout his administration.
In the kind of reaction that his accusers might well have anticipated, President Bolsonaro used scatological language to dismiss the investigation. He said he will answer nothing that emanates from the probe, saying the senators who headed it are simply determined to grind his government down. Presidential elections in Brazil will take place in early October of next year. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
They're from Rhode Island,
The main
New York,
headlines
and
again.
Detroit.
Italy are the winners of
All
the Euro
11 men are
2020
facing
Championship
gun-related
after
charges,
beating
and
England
some are not
3-2
telling
on
police who they
penalties.
are
Richard
because of their
Branson
beliefs
says
and
it's the
connection
dawn
to
of a
the
new
group
space
Rise
age
of
after
the
he
Moors.
flew to the edge of
NBC
space
10's Katie
in his
Brace
own
has the
Virgin
new
Galactic
information from
spacecraft.
overnight.
And several states in the
Two men
western
in
part of
camo
America
appear
and
calm
in
as
Canada
police
are
arrested them.
experiencing
Live
extreme
Boston
heat and
captured these moments
wildfires
that
which are
ended
burning
a
more than
9-hour
300,000
standoff.
acres of
Look out
land.
the window,
And
saw a
that is
man
the
in
latest
full
from
tactical
Feature
gear.
Story
It was
News. I'm
definitely
Jagriti
terrifying.
Dave in
Amelia
Washington.
Isabel lives right next to
The
95
Relationship
North
Pro
Wakefield,
talks
where
to
the
your
man went
girlfriend,
and
so you don't have
standoff began
to.
around 1:30.
We're joined
State
today in our
troopers
demo
had two
center by
vehicles
Eric
in the
and
brick
Pam, a
down lane
couple
with
that's been
hazard lights
teetering on the edge
flashing
of
and
divorce
went to
for
help.
years.
So, Pam, you guys have been using the controller all morning. I understand it's a very good listener.
It's like talking to a fully developed person. It's got to be a major relief, not needing your husband to be your partner or a friend.
So, Eric, it must be a tremendous relief to know that there's someone else on the other end of Pam's eye roll.
Now I can focus on my game instead of worrying about all that stuff she said there.
Will the Relationship Pro keep you two together?
I think it'll drag this thing out for another couple months.
Amazing. Now, to thank you two for coming on the show, we bought you two the new deluxe Relationship Pro Extreme.
This expanded model has two new modes. Fantasy mode, which allows you to select the age and nationality of the controller's voice. Oh, I choose a voice like my dad. Okay. And a hyper-realistic mode that starts fights and then grovels pathetically when it's afraid you might get rid of it.
Yes, 95 through Wakefield was shut down. Police arrested two of the men fairly quickly. Negotiators reached out to the rest who were in their vehicles and in the
Free Talk
woods.
Live. The variety.
It's Free Talk Live, where we're so professional I didn't even have my headphones on, so I didn't realize that one of these tabs I had open from MSNBC.com was just playing audio there for everyone to listen to, so sorry about that. I normally have them muted by default, but that setting appears to have been changed recently for whatever reason. Maybe I did it, I don't recall doing that, but technology is weird and it's very rarely actually cooperative. Just trying to make anything do what you want it to do is typically a exhaustive trial and error process, and Google Chrome is, one of the worst browsers out there. I loved Google Chrome when it first came out, right? I mean, I don't know if you ever read the comic that they released. It was this massive, long comic explaining, why their browser was different, why browsers needed to change. It was truly a dark age of web browsers back then. Firefox was this bloated, useless monstrosity. The Internet Explorer was its primary competition. And then along came Google Chrome. It was sleek, it was fast, it was awesome. And it just, over time, brought all the bloat back. To the extent that right now I could open Task Manager and Google Chrome would easily be using at least 5 gigabytes of RAM. Just sitting there, basically doing nothing.
Well, I'm sure it's doing plenty.
Part of it's not...
I'm sure it's gathering lots and lots of information on you.
Sure. But part of it isn't really Google Chrome's fault, except that, they're allowing all of these videos to autoplay. That tab wasn't even active. In that browser window wasn't even active, and yet Google Chrome was like, sure, video, you can go ahead and play. It's absolutely... And now
I am intensely irritated by auto-playing videos. Like, every time that I go onto a website and oh, here's a video, and then I try and stop it and scroll past it and no, I'm gonna stay here on your screen obscuring what you're trying to read.
I hate that as well. The ones where that you click to read an article, and then there's this 3-minute long video that's completely unrelated to the article. Who knows why they're trying to shove that down your throat? But you scroll down, and what happens? The video comes with you. Goes down there into the bottom right corner. No, get this out of here. Now, a lot of these problems could be caused by using things like NoScript or Ghostery, but then you have to go through and re-enable them when you do want to watch the video. It would just make so much more sense if it didn't automatically play. And if it was going to automatically play, at least be a video about the article that I'm trying to read, not this unrelated thing about a school shooting or stabbing or a bus that broke down or whatever.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll be extra annoying. So, like, I can't close the little video, just absolutely cannot close it. And, like, okay, well, I'll pause the video. And it'll, like, wait 10 seconds and then play a new video.
The only thing I hate worse than all of that are these websites that try to get me to disable my ad blocker. It's not going to happen. But that doesn't stop Fox News. Every single time I click on one of their articles, open a new tab, it pops up that same stupid pop-up again. Please disable your ad blocker. No, Fox, you make plenty of money.
Yeah.
I'm not giving you more.
Yeah, and occasionally I'll run across a site that I cannot get to load without disabling my ad blocker. It's like, come on, seriously.
MSNBC does that to me a couple of times a week, but a couple of times a week it lets me go ahead and click this button that says continue without supporting. Yes, I don't support MSNBC. You don't need my support. Your job is to sell advertisements to advertisers, not to sell me to advertisers. But you also mentioned the issue of just I like venting about the internet and the state that it's in because so few people realize just how bad it really is. There's all these trash sites that are like Ranker and other ones like that. That's the number one that I always recall. It's got this huge share bar at the top for all of their social media. It's also got one at the bottom. It's also got these labels. It's got pictures, and you got to click through one at a time, and then there's ads everywhere. And the total amount of screen space dedicated to the actual content is about 25% of the page. The rest are advertisers and spam and just...
It's exactly like an Idiocracy, where he's got this, like, giant, super huge screen, and it's got this, like, palm print-sized bit in the middle that is actually the content, and the rest of it is all ads from corner to corner.
That's exactly it. And prior to Ghostery's change, where Ghostery is a really cool thing that used to block these trackers that all of these websites use in order to, quote, better advertise to you, but really they're just selling you to advertisers. They used to save all of your settings locally. No, they became the enemy that they were fighting. Now you have to have an account with them, and all of your settings are managed online. So I can't recommend Ghostery anymore. But I used to love them, and I loved loading just a random website and seeing just how many trackers there actually were. It would frequently just be in the hundreds. And these are people who are just collecting data on you so they can sell it to Google or any of the other services that they provide access to.
Yeah, at the moment I'm using Brave, and it does another thing, and it's only 26 trackers that it has blocked on this MSNBC site.
Well, that's good. That's a relatively small number. But speaking of this MSNBC site, what I actually pulled up was this freak out article from MSNBC, because they're hard left, so obviously they're going to freak out, called "The Rise of the Moors Standoff Could Have Been a Lot Worse. What about next time?"
Dun, dun, dun.
America has a growing problem with armed extremists itching for a showdown. Now, these people, you got to remember, they were minding their own business in Massachusetts. They went late at night because they didn't want to run into a bunch of traffic, and they ran out of gas, and they were solving that problem.
Yeah, they didn't even want to stop at your gas station. They're like, okay, maybe if we just we can bring our own gas, so in case this happens, we can just stop and refuel real quick, so that we're just in and out and just straight through this place. No.
So these people were the diametric opposite of itching for a showdown. They did everything they could to avoid interacting with anyone.
Right. A bunch of them literally ran off into the woods rather than deal with any of this crap. That's not itching for a showdown. That is trying to avoid the conflict as much as you can.
So 2 people appeared in court in Malden, Massachusetts on Wednesday in connection with a 9-hour standoff between members of an armed militia and state police over the weekend. Well, while technically true, that is the most biased way they could have written that statement. It would be far more accurate to say that people with guns did not want to interact with the police.
Yeah. Yeah, and
there was no armed standoff. And to be fair, they didn't call it an armed standoff, but they did use the word standoff in the same sentence where they talked about an armed militia and state police. They did everything they could to paint this as an armed standoff without actually engaging in slander.
Yeah, and it's a strange thing that militia has become this terrifying word when it started, when this whole thing started, what the militia is just people. Like, everybody was part of the militia. That was how the militia worked, was, in case we get invaded by the Brits again, you've trained with your weapons and you have some level of organization of how to resist them.
Well, for the most part, they didn't even need weapons training because the same weapons they would have been using against the British were the same weapons that they used to, feed their family through the winter. Although the events that led to nearly all of the 11 men involved being charged seem bizarre, armed extremism is becoming all too common in the country. What are they extremists of? Freedom?
Well, I mean, most of the people that are getting armed in this country, their extreme is, hey, I would like to not have my building burned down.
At about 1:30 a.m. on Saturday, a Massachusetts state trooper noticed two cars stopped on the shoulder of I-95, 15 miles north of Boston. So these people weren't looking for trouble. They were just stopped on the side of the highway. And this state trooper, looking for trouble, decided to bother them. It looked like someone was trying to refuel at least one of the cars, and troopers, quote, stopped to assist.
Yeah, real assist. Let me assist you into a jail cell here.
That's exactly what they did. I mean, you see vehicles parked on the side of the street. There's a bunch of people. They're refueling at least one of the cars. They probably have things under control, it would seem. But no, the state trooper, quote, stopped to assist, and now they're being charged. What are your thoughts on this nonsense? More coming up, 603-283-6160. You're welcome to weigh in.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you're helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's
the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people like passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. You're welcome to weigh in. 603-283-6160. You can join the conversation about the Moors. You can talk about the insane Chevron situation. You can talk about the laughable diversity portfolio report thing that the intelligence communities put forward. Or you can talk about, whatever you care about. That's what we do here on Free Talk Live. We let you talk about anything you want, including, what was that guy earlier?
The Amish atheist conspiracy to eat dinosaur meat.
Yeah, that one was weird. Bonnie also remembered Dinovites, the advertiser. That's with a V as in Victor, versus, but she ended up Googling dinosaur chicken nuggets or something. She sent me a screenshot of that. It was absolutely, it was the most sensible response I could have ever hoped for.
You can tell that they're Amish because they are eating chicken in the shape of dinosaurs. Don't you see?
Well, he mentioned turkeys, and dude, it was weird, but...
Well, and okay, to be fair, turkeys are dinosaurs.
Every bird is.
Yep.
But let's go to the phones. We've got Joey calling from Traverse City, Michigan. Joey, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, guys. Joey from Traverse City. I just wanted to say to you all, I really am grateful for you guys. I started listening... probably the start of this year. I found you guys on this radio app that I'm on, and I just am very, very, very thankful for you guys.
Well, thank you.
Just the truth and the passion that you guys have. It's motivating, and despite all the junk in this world, I just really wanted to tell you guys that I'm thankful for you guys, and you're motivating me to be a better person. So thank you.
Awesome, Joey. That's wonderful to hear. Out of
That's
curiosity,
about the highest compliment I think there is.
What is the app that you were using when you found Free Talk Live? Was it TuneIn?
I went right onto my my Google Apps because I have an Android, and I downloaded Simple Radio, and it allowed me to listen to one of my favorite rock stations in California. And it also, I was searching around, for something to listen to at work, and I stumbled upon you guys.
Nice.
And I just can't tell you how grateful I am for you guys presenting the points of views or the point of views that you do, and the diversity, and just I don't know. I'm very grateful for you guys, and you're motivating me to try harder tomorrow and live another day. So I appreciate you guys.
Awesome. I appreciate the call, Joey. It's always good to hear from someone who isn't, just going to troll, but someone who's, actually being impacted in a positive way by what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it warms my heart. It really does. And I feel you where, like, if you are a lover of freedom and you see this nonsense that is polarizing us into two places, neither of which are at all reasonable, and those are like the only messages you're getting about this stuff, like it can be very alienating. And to realize that, no, I'm not the only one that uses logic and loves to be free.
I mean, let's just look at the way that MSNBC has characterized the Moors in this article, dangerous extremists, who needed help from the state trooper, armed extremists, an armed militia, 9-hour standoff. I mean, they're doing everything they can to make people afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just them. If you go to Fox News, it's pretty much the same thing. That's how this whole critical race theory nonsense got started, was someone on Fox News or Breitbart or one of these other places saying, ooh, that sounds scary. Let's galvanize the right against this. Let's keep them pitted against each other, fighting at their throats. That way people aren't paying attention to the fact that when we go from Republican to Democrat to Republican to Democrat, nothing ever changes.
It all heads in exactly the same direction.
So back into this article, the armed men who identified themselves as belonging to the Rise of the Moors, a majority African-American militia group, fled when police approached. I can't say I blame them. The police officer may have been stopping to assist, but generally they're investigating a crime, and if they don't...
I just think it's unfortunate that fleeing did not work. Because, yeah, I mean, they clearly conspired to commit this crime of driving through Massachusetts.
Yes. So they fled when police approached. Again, police aren't your friends. I mean, they're predators.
Mm-hmm.
Generally a good idea to avoid them, not to flee from them.
Yeah, this is clearly not an effective tactic for getting away from them, but I can't really blame you for trying at that point.
But it's always best to avoid them. Triggering a long standoff that involved hostage negotiators and a tactical team, but ultimately was resolved peacefully. Now, notice the wording here. It involved hostage negotiators, but no actual allegation of having hostages.
Yeah.
So they only mentioned the fact that this involved hostage negotiators instead of just negotiators to imply in people's minds, to make them think, oh, these people took hostages. But no, they didn't. They could have left the word hostage out of that sentence entirely, and it would have been more honest.
How many scare words can I cram into this without technically lying?
And a tactical team.
Well, and this is a really standard way of delivering false, well, not exactly false information, but heavily weighted information. Is they will be like, see, we had to do such and such.
Yeah, we had to bring in hostage negotiators to deal with this. No, you brought in negotiators because there were no hostages. But you got to look at how they use little words like that to twist the narrative in people's minds.
And it's like, see, this was such a serious situation that we had to do this. And it's like, that's totally circular logic. Like, you did this thing, which was probably completely unnecessary, and now you're claiming that because you did it, it was necessary.
We're like 3 paragraphs into this, and already MSNBC has painted this group as being armed extremists engaged in a 9-hour-long standoff with state troopers that involved hostage negotiators and a SWAT team. That's not accurate to how it actually happened. The men were taken into custody, and a violent and potentially racially incendiary outcome was mercifully avoided. Well, that's because the state troopers almost accidentally created a violent and potentially racially incendiary outcome. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been one. Who created this conflict between the state troopers and the Moors, who were out there minding their own business and, refueling their vehicle?
Yep, driving to the range up in Maine because they want to go do that stuff, and Maine isn't insane about guns in the way that Massachusetts is. Just peacefully minding their own business, and oh no, it's all this is necessary, and hostage negotiators, and 9-hour standoff.
If you were under the illusion that only white guys join heavily armed militia-style groups with lunatic ideologies, That fallacy was smashed in the hours of Saturday morning. The incident publicly illustrates what law enforcement professionals already know: domestic extremism, the kind that can lead to violence, is metastasizing across our country's regions and races. Now, not only, let's recap here. This is a heavily armed militia-style group with a lunatic ideology engaged in a 9-hour standoff with state police that involved hostage negotiators. We're four paragraphs in at this point.
Or you could have just let them refuel and leave.
How many other ways are news outlets misleading people? 603-283-6160. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Karl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave. Italy are the winners of the Euro 2020 Championship after beating England 3-2 on penalties. Both sides had drawn 1-1 before the tense shootout that ultimately ended in heartbreak for the Three Lions. Laura Macon-Asherwood reports on the dramatic final.
Well, the disappointment here in London is palpable. Rather than seeing people flooding out of pubs, out of their homes to celebrate on the streets, as we saw at the end of that semi-final match, instead people are walking home quite subdued, really. This was a match for which people were really hopeful that it would finally end that title drought for England. They hadn't won a major international tournament since 1966, 55 years ago, but it was not to be. Instead, Italy, our Euro champions, winning on penalties 3-2. But it's not just been about disappointment tonight. There was obviously hope at the start. There were messages from Her Majesty the Queen, also from the Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Richard Branson says it's the dawn of a new space age after he flew to the edge of space in his own Virgin Galactic spacecraft. It was the company's first fully crewed test flight, and it rocketed more than 50 miles above the Earth before gliding back safely to the runway at Spaceport America in New Mexico.
3, 2, 1, release, release, release. Clean release. Ignition. Good rocket motor burn.
That was the moment a Virgin Galactic controller read the countdown to the release of the Unity spaceplane from its mothership. 70-year-old Branson joined 5 crew members for the flight, which took about an hour from takeoff to landing. He's also won the Battle of the Billionaires, getting there before Amazon's Jeff Bezos, who has a trip scheduled for 20th of July in his Blue Origin rocket ship. Jeff Bezos congratulated Richard Branson and the crew in an Instagram post, adding, "Can't wait to join the club." And Elon Musk, whose SpaceX program is also working towards commercial space tourism, was one of many people who attended the launch. Virgin Galactic plans to start taking paying customers into space next year, and several hundred people have already reserved their spot, with tickets costing up to $250,000. Several states in the western part of America and Canada are experiencing extreme heat and wildfires, which are burning more than 300,000 acres of land. California, Oregon, Idaho and British Columbia in Canada were under evacuation orders, and millions of people have been warned to take precautions against the brutal heat. In Death Valley in southeastern California, temperatures soared to 128 degrees Fahrenheit or 53 degrees Celsius on Saturday, according to the National Weather Service. The Bureau of Land Management also announced that in Arizona, 2 firefighters died in an aircraft accident while they were working to control what's being called the Cedar Basin Fire. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
it is Free Talk Live. You're welcome to join the discussion, 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
And Beagless Mountaineer.
And we're talking about this article from MSNBC because it so blatantly lays bare the ways in which media uses strongly misleading language, strong wording, or descriptions or adjectives that just aren't appropriate in order to mislead people into believing something happened that didn't happen. Now, they took this incident with the Moors and they painted it as an armed extremist group with lunatic ideologies having a 9-hour standoff with police that was ultimately resolved by the use of SWAT teams and hostage negotiators.
Yeah, you want to talk about lunatic ideologies? How about statism? How about the idea of, hey, there's some people that are owning a thing I don't like. I'm going to put them in a cage.
This article goes on, where there is likely a difference in terms of ideology and origin of a far-right militia group like the Oath Keepers and one like the Rise of the Moors, the dangers they pose to society are the same. The amorphous tentacles of various belief systems, including hate-based nationalism, racial supremacy, sovereign citizen identity, which, as has been pointed out repeatedly on the show, is a oxymoron. If you're sovereign, then you're not a citizen of any particular nation. Anti-government anarchism and civil war insiders are shape-shifting in ways that can make them harder for authorities to detect, deter, and defeat. Now, how is being anti-government anarchist, how does that need to be deterred and defeated?
Well, because it's the tentacle, it's the amorphous tentacles of a belief system. What does this sentence even mean? The amorphous tentacles of various belief systems, including hate-based nationalism.
You got to cut out that part of
awful.
it. The amorphous tentacles of various belief systems are shape-shifting in ways that make them harder for authorities to detect, deter, and defeat. The others
are they really?
I don't know. Probably not.
I'm pretty sure that anti-government anarchism is pretty much the same as anti-government anarchism has always been.
The Southern Poverty Law Center reports that some members of the Rise of the Moors have engaged in violent acts. Well, you're going to find violent people in every group. I mean, there are libertarians in New Hampshire, presumably, who have engaged in violent acts, from shootings and robberies to other armed confrontations. But yet again, the existence of these people who have acted in bad faith are contrary to the peaceful principles that we outline.
Yeah.
That's likely to be true of the Rise of, not knowing their ideology, that's likely to be true of them as well.
Yeah, this is such a false equivalency. They're saying specifically that people who have peaceful ideologies are in the same category as people who have genocidal ideologies.
The group believes its members are immune from U.S. law because their ancestors were the original founders of America after inexplicably traveling here from Morocco. But the Mormons have a crazy belief too. So during the standoff at around 4 a.m., because you got to remember these people were traveling late at night, specifically in order to avoid encountering people, a man whom the Boston Globe identified as Jamal Talib Abdullah Bey said he was broadcasting live from I-95. His commentary during his live feed seemed to signal that this might have been a staged event designed to garner attention for the group and provoke criminal charges that might allow the group to test its bizarre legal theories in court. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
They were accosted by police, so they immediately began recording, which is what one should do when one encounters the police. No one is trying to face criminal charges in Massachusetts to test out bizarre legal theories in court.
Yeah, that just doesn't make any sense.
Such publicity could also potentially recruit more followers. If we're to have any hope of containing the convoluted cacophony of gun-toting extremists hell-bent on eroding our rule of law, that's a phrase I'm not used to seeing from Democrats.
Rule of law?
Yeah, that's a Republican phrase.
Yeah, well, I mean, they are frequently described by a lot of the, people who actually care about truth on the left as going further and further to the right. Now, that's not quite accurate because what they're doing is going further and further to authoritarianism. But, I mean, it is absolutely fair that the Democratic Party and all of the things that are associated with it are honestly right of center at this point.
Yes, the only ones left of center at this point are the libertarians, the actual peace advocates. So let's go back over this. If we're going to have any hope of containing the convoluted cacophony of gun-toting extremists hell-bent on eroding our rule of law and dividing our democracy, there are three things that need to happen. Let's keep in mind how MSNBC has gone out of their way to use the most loaded language they could have in order to make you afraid of these people. I don't know how to tell you this. Fear is one of the primary causes of division in the United States.
Yeah, your word salad of propaganda is a convoluted cacophony. Thank you very much.
So now the Moors are a gun-toting, or a group of gun-toting extremists hell-bent on eroding our rule of law and dividing our democracy. These people were refueling their vehicle at 3 o'clock in the morning when this nonsense happened. And MSNBC has painted them as being gun-toting extremists hell-bent on eroding our rule of law and dividing our democracy.
Yeah, our rule of law, just the sort of place where you can find the justice of Chevron charging in federal court criminal charges of anyone who dare oppose them.
Just imagine being so insane that you would write an article like this. One of those three things that needs to happen is law enforcement training. Oh, yes, let's give them more money. More
Bearcats!
Our police departments need to take a lesson from how the Massachusetts troopers handled this incident. Well, the incident they created from the first officer on the scene, who, I would like to reiterate, should have just minded his own damn business and kept driving.
Yeah, here's how that should have gone if you really wanted to help them. You stop, you say, hey, need any help? They're like, nah, we're good, okay, and then you drive on.
That would have been the best way that this could have gone.
Yeah, and then you know what would have happened? They'd have driven to Maine, where they were headed, they'd have shot their guns in Maine, because that's a thing you can do there, and just none of this would have had to happen at all.
Let's assume the article is right. The lunatic author here is right, and these people staged this entire thing to test out their crazy court theories. This means that all you have to do in order to make this massive media event unfold is to break down while driving through Massachusetts and to be in the possession of firearms. That is enough. And the author's okay with this, to justify this gigantic issue where now these people are being tried. I think that in and of itself is a problem. It's like suicide by cop. The fact that that's even a thing is its own problem.
Yeah, so your theory is that the cops did the right thing by letting them get all of this media attention, and other cops need to be trained to do this same thing.
Yes, let's imagine a hypothetical scenario where they were actively trying to create this thing so they could test out their court theories, and the state trooper drives by, sees that they're fine, or even asks, hey, you need some help, and then keeps going. Let's imagine a world where the police state isn't so out of control that you can't actively create these sort of live stream events.
Mm-hmm.
As Mason explained, we train to those encounters. We very much understand the philosophy that underlies that mindset. What mindset? And we train our officers actually at the academy on these interactions and how to de-escalate these situations. Oh, so they got a new playbook? Because last I've heard, the police aren't really good at de-escalating anything. In fact, they tend to murder people.
You de-escalated this from being broken down on the side of a road to a media frenzy and several court cases.
Yeah, that's not de-escalating, is it? That's escalating it significantly when you could have just helped them on their way and gotten them out of your state. But what are your thoughts? 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
If you're looking for work, you know the math. There are many more applicants than openings, so you need to stand out, not blend into the blah, blah, blah your interviewer is hearing from your competition. Here's a tip. In your interview, you will be judged more by the questions you ask than the answers you give. Yes, do anticipate the obvious job interview questions and prepare concise, insightful, glass-half-full sounding responses. And you should interview your interviewer. Seem genuinely curious about what will help get results. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important. You want to cut through the clutter. For more tips for job seekers and making all the other conversations you have more productive, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, the show where anyone can call about whatever they want. And we do mean anyone.
It's happening every day. They sip some kind of chemicals through the floor.
Oh, so it's like gas.
I mean, it sounds crazy, but it's the truth.
I was under the impression they were coming into your house and like holding you down.
Well, they can come in. Oh, yeah, I got remote controls right now. I can't find them. I listen to this preacher man. Every time I listen to him, some kind of way they turns the station off.
Maybe it's just going off.
I mean, you'd be surprised.
They've got the remote, Mark.
How much power they have, and that's what they got. They got a lot of power.
I think you should go get some help.
I think you should talk to somebody who cares about you and ask them about psychological help. Somewhere, someone has had gas pumped into their room, but I just don't think it's happening with Mary because she's outspoken.
What does she speak out against? I should have asked her that.
I don't know.
Damn it.
You're done.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Words are important, and MSNBC knows that. And that's why they're using the most misleading words they can in order to drive home a certain narrative that is, while technically correct, could not possibly be less representative of what happened.
Well, the last thing that they want you doing is examining the evidence and coming to your own opinion about what happened. No, no, no. You need to be led around by the nose to do and think exactly what we at MSNBC have decided are approved opinions.
I mean, you got to think about the ways in which something can be worded. Let's say I'm holding an empty paper towel holder, you know, one of those just foot-long cardboard things. And let's say I hit you in the arm with it, you know, very lightly. You could very well say, Arya strikes peakless or bashes peakless with handheld blunt object. And that would technically be true. But it's not at all what would happen from someone tapping you with a cardboard paper towel.
Battered
holder.
and assaulted.
Right? You can use whatever
With
language
blunt
you
object.
want. And it's all technically true.
It is technically a blunt object. It's just not the sort of heavy thing you think of when I say that.
No, and the media knows this, and that's why they're going out of their way in this article to paint the Moors as this dangerous extremist, this well-armed, dangerous extremist group that was involved in this 9-hour standoff with the state police and with SWAT, and it was only resolved when some hostage negotiators got involved.
Well, and a big part of what they're doing is they're going, look, guys, I know that these are one of those protected groups that you're usually supposed to treat with sympathy and condescension, but we need you to treat this part of that group with fear and loathing.
Well, before we get further into this, let's go to the phones. We've got Bad Slave calling from New Hampshire. Bad Slave, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, thanks for taking your call. My call, whatever.
Yeah, what's on your mind tonight?
It's our call now.
There we go. We got it all together. I want to bring up just the basic idea that the problem with the rule of law, which is brought into the mix here, is that they have created so many laws that don't produce a victim. I mean, there's nothing to protect. There's nothing to.
Well, an organization that doesn't play by its own rules, such as the U.S. government, doesn't really have any ground to stand on in telling people they need to play by its rules. All they have is physical force. It's violence to justify it. But the U.S. government does have a set of laws, a set of rules that it's supposed to follow that are called the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't followed those since like 1779.
Yeah, so the idea that you're...
I don't know when the Constitution was written. I know I just made someone angry because I'm almost certain it was written in like 1780s. Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't care. Get angry.
But yeah, it's...
7.
Say again?
1787.
87, thank you.
Okay.
But yeah, they haven't played by their own rules. I mean, if this is supposed to be undermining the rule of law, seems to me that what they are doing is saying, hey, we're going to exercise this right that you promised us, and we're going to expect you to respect our right to do this thing.
Yes, because the U.S. government does explicitly allow people to keep and bear arms, quote, in a well-regulated militia.
Mm-hmm. And they are clearly a well-regulated militia. So what's the problem, guy?
I don't know, and I don't see a problem. Do you know what the problem is, Bad Slave?
Here's my question is, what is the purpose of a law that doesn't bring up a victim of any kind?
Well, the vast majority of these laws are basically meant to put black and Mexicans in prisons. And I mean, and that's what they're used for, and that's what they do.
I was imprisoned with one of those laws for 2 years.
Yeah.
So.
Well, honestly, it's revenue generation. It lets them move money from the population to their own pockets. That is the effect of most of these victimless so-called crimes.
Bad Slave, thank you so much for the call tonight. You're absolutely right. Peakless, a lot of these prisons are built with private contractors. Obviously, the government doesn't hire building teams, so it has to hire somebody, and that's a kickback to the guy whose buddy is a politician or who gave money to this particular politician. It's all a racket. It's just a way of transferring money from the little people out into the pockets of politicians.
Exactly. So I mean, you've got the direct transfer when they, oh well, there's a fine for doing that. I mean, you're not hurting anybody or anything like that, but we've decided we don't like it, so there's a fine for that. So there's the direct one.
And if you don't pay the fine, they'll throw you in jail.
So the process of throwing you in jail, again, it's a big wealth transfer because they have to pay all these lawyers and all these prosecutors and all these judges. So they're taking money from you that way. They're taking money to build the jail. They're taking money to maintain the jail. And the thing is that these things, much like war, are ways that they can move money around without getting called on it.
Absolutely. So let's wrap up this article as quickly as we can. The author thinks that there are 3 things that, quote, we can be doing to fight these peaceful people who were minding their business out in Massachusetts. We certainly don't want peaceful people minding their own business, do we? Second, intelligence collection. Little was known in police circles about Rise of the Moors before this incident because they're peaceful people. Why would the police need to have files on them?
Well, we clearly need more spies.
Well, we got Joe Biden on it.
Right.
It can be hard to track connections to other organizations because they tend to operate very privately. Well, then what? I don't see the
You're
problem.
operating privately. You're not bothering anybody. That makes you hard to track, so we need to be more vigilant at tracking you.
I've been an anarchist or a voluntarist so long where I literally do not understand the lens through which these people are looking at the world.
You are not operating in the tiny little window of approved behavior that I have in my mind, and that means you need to stop.
We need far more collaboration between the police and organizations like these as the police ramp up intelligent collection, training, and preparations for encounters like the one in Massachusetts. The encounter, again, that they caused. The police caused that encounter. This kind of private and public partnership, right? Isn't that what the Democrats call fascism?
Yeah, that is fascism. Private-public partnership. That's the Mussolini definition of fascism.
And they're clamoring for it. It's alluded to in the recent national strategy for countering domestic terrorism, yet there is no reference to when or how it will take shape. It must begin now, and it's going to take increased budgets to do it.
By defund the police, I meant hyper, super, ultra, mega fund. Not only the police, but the spies and everything connected to it.
The author here literally says, when it comes to training and intelligence gathering, defunding the police won't help. So here, this leftist from this leftist journal that's been pushing this defund the police narrative suddenly says, we need to increase police budgets so that they can go after these peaceful people who had the audacity to travel through Massachusetts. Third is legislation. Proactive policing of domestic terror threats is hampered by the lack of tools in the investigative toolkit.
Are you absolutely out of your mind? The domestic terrorists toolkit, like the USA Patriot Act, the NDAA, like all of that, not enough. Just not enough tools.
Not to mention the stuff that Edward Snowden revealed to us.
Right.
The massive dragnets where they can basically read whatever email or text message or digital communication they want to read.
Yeah, the fact that they are spying on every single one of us all of the time while claiming not to do so. Just not enough tools. Not enough tools.
We have laws against international terrorism that make it easy for the FBI and other agencies to learn about violent intentions before they play out. Court-ordered wiretap source development and undercover operations have all helped prevent major acts of terrorism on U.S. soil. Yet we have nothing for domestic terrorism, which I've written about extensively. I'm pretty sure that the Patriot Act and all of that nonsense would still apply to domestic terrorism.
Oh, it specifically says that it does. I mean, this Frank Fugliuzzi is literally calling out for a secret police.
He is, and he wants the public and private partnerships to merge so that we can be protected from all of these innocent people out there minding their own business.
More fascist secret police.
Hey, thanks for listening. That's it for tonight, but we're online in the meantime. Check us out at freetalklive.com. That's freetalklive.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty.